The ancient stone tablet cracked open with a sound like thunder, and the high priestess's face went white as she read the words that hadn't seen light in 500 years. The celestial wolf will rise under the blood moon, marked by death, chosen by sacrifice. Her hands trembled as she looked up at the Alpha King. Your Majesty, if this prophecy is true, if a celestial wolf still lives after the massacre. She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Everyone in the council chamber understood what it meant. The bloodline they'd spent 23 years believing extinct might have a survivor. And if that survivor shifted under tomorrow's blood moon, the goddess herself would either bless them or destroy them. Adrian's jaw clenched. Find her. Search every corner of the kingdom. If there's a celestial wolf out there, I want her found before sunrise. What he didn't say, what he couldn't say was that his wolf was already howling with recognition, already sensing that somewhere in his kingdom, his mate was about to face a trial that would change everything. But before we find out who she is, and whether she survives the blood moon, if you're already hooked by this prophecy, show the moon goddess some love by hitting that like button. Trust me, you'll want to remember where you heard this story when everyone's talking about it later. Now, let's meet the wolf who's about to rewrite destiny. Chapter 1. The Blood Moon Trial. The chains rattled against the ancient stone as two guards hauled Sherry through the temple courtyard. She kept her bare feet silent against the cold marble, her threadbare dress hanging loose on her thin frame. Around her, the crowd swelled hundreds, maybe thousands of wolves from every corner of the kingdom, all gathered to watch her die. Because that's what this was. An execution dressed up as justice. Move faster, Runt, the guard on her left snarled, yanking her forward so hard she stumbled. His grip left bruises on her already scarred arms. Sherry said nothing. Words only made things worse for wolves like her. Wolves with no family, no pack status, no worth in the eyes of the hierarchy that ruled their world. The celestial circle rose before her, a massive ring of white stone carved with symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness. At its center stood a raised platform, and above it, the blood moon hung full and terrible in the night sky. Its crimson light painted everything the color of fresh wounds. She'd heard the stories since childhood. Wolves forced to shift under the blood moon didn't just die, they were unmade. Their wolves ripped from their souls, their human sides left as empty husks that couldn't even remember their own names. It was the cruelest execution method the old laws allowed, reserved for the worst traitors. And somehow, she'd been accused of treason. The crowd parted as the guards dragged her up the steps to the platform. Sherry caught glimpses of faces in the firelight, some hungry for entertainment, others merely curious. A few that looked almost sad. None moved to help her. None ever did. At the top of the platform stood the high priestess, draped in midnight robes with silver thread that caught the moonlight. Beside her, on an ornate throne of black stone, sat the Alpha King. Adrian Robertson was everything the legends promised. Broad-shouldered and commanding, with dark hair that fell to his collar and eyes like molten gold. He wore black leather and ceremonial armor that spoke of countless victories. When his gaze landed on Sherry, she felt it like a physical weight, not cruel, exactly, but utterly unreadable. There she is. A woman's voice cut through the murmuring crowd, sharp with satisfaction. The little Omega who dared to blaspheme against the goddess herself. Sherry's head jerked up despite herself. Standing beside the throne was the most beautiful she-wolf she'd ever seen. Tall and elegant in a gown of deep emerald, with cascading auburn hair and eyes like green poison. Katina Shelton. Daughter of the High Elder. Future Luna Queen, according to every rumor that reached even Sherry's forgotten corners of the kingdom, and the one who'd accused her of crimes she didn't commit. Katina smiled, sharp as broken glass. Look at her, my king. Does she look like someone capable of receiving visions from the moon goddess? She's barely more than a rogue. The crowd murmured agreement. Sherry's chest tightened. She'd never claimed to receive visions, not publicly, anyway. The dreams that came to her in the darkness of abandoned barns, the whispers of a woman's voice that felt ancient and kind, those were private, sacred. She told no one except the wild wolves who'd raised her in the forest beyond Packlands. Someone had been watching her, listening, waiting for an excuse to drag her here. Adrian leaned forward slightly, his golden eyes never leaving Sherry's face. Explain the charges. Of course, my king. Katina descended from the dais with practiced grace, circling Sherry like a predator. This pathetic creature has been spreading lies throughout the outer villages, claiming the moon goddess speaks to her, claiming she's been marked for some great purpose. Her voice dripped with contempt. She even told witnesses she's seen prophecies of the celestial wolf's return. I never... Sherry started, but a guard's hand clamped over her mouth. Let her speak. Adrian's voice cracked like a whip through the night air. The guard's hand dropped instantly. Every wolf on the platform lowered their gaze in submission. Every wolf except Sherry, who couldn't look away from the king's face. She drew a shaking breath. I never claimed to be special, Alpha King. I had dreams, yes. The goddess came to me sometimes when I was alone and afraid. But I never told anyone except... She stopped, not wanting to mention the wild wolves who'd shown her more kindness than any shifter ever had. Lies. Katina's smile widened. My sources heard you clearly. You said the prophecy was awakening. You said the celestial bloodline would rise again. She turned to Adrian, her voice honey-sweet. There's a simple way to settle this, isn't there? Force her to shift under the blood moon. If she truly carries the goddess's favor, she'll survive. But if she's a fraud, a weak omega with delusions of grandeur, the moon will judge her accordingly. Sherry's blood turned to ice. Around her the crowd's murmurs grew louder, more hostile. Some shouted agreement. Others called for her blood. The blood moon pulsed overhead, and she swore she could feel its heat on her skin, its pressure against her skull. Adrian studied her for a long moment. Can you shift? Yes, Alpha King. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Have you shifted under the blood moon before? No one has, my king. The high priestess stepped forward, her ancient face grave. Not in 300 years. Not since the last celestial wolf died. The old laws are clear: any who shift under its light without divine protection will be destroyed. Then this is an execution, not a trial. Adrian's jaw tightened. It's justice, Katina countered smoothly. If she's innocent, the goddess will protect her. If she's guilty of blasphemy, of lying about divine visions, then the moon will deliver appropriate punishment. She gestured to the crimson sky. The goddess herself will be her judge. The high priestess struck her staff against the stone 3 times, and the crowd fell silent. The accused has been charged with blasphemy and false prophecy. The blood moon trial has been invoked. Does the Alpha King permit this judgment? All eyes turned to Adrian. Sherry watched emotions flicker across his face. Doubt, frustration, something that might have been regret. But in the end, he was bound by the old laws just as much as she was. The trial is permitted, his voice carried across the courtyard. Let the goddess decide. The chains around Sherry's wrists fell away. She stood on shaking legs, acutely aware of thousands of eyes watching her, waiting for her to burn. Katina stepped back to the edge of the platform, arms crossed, her expression one of barely contained glee. This was what she'd wanted. Public execution dressed up as divine judgment, proof that Sherry was nothing, that any whisper of prophecy was a lie that deserved the cruelest punishment. The high priestess moved beside Sherry, her voice dropping to a whisper only she could hear. If you have any truth in you, child, let it rise now. The goddess sees all. Sherry closed her eyes. She reached for the familiar presence of her wolf, that warm consciousness that had been her only constant companion since childhood. The creature who'd kept her sane through beatings and starvation, who'd hunted with her in the deep woods, who'd never judged her for being unwanted. Please, she thought, please don't let them win. Her wolf surged forward not with fear, but with something fierce and eager. Something that felt like recognition, like this moment had been waiting for them their entire lives. The shift began. Pain exploded through her body as bones reshaped, as muscles reformed, as her human skin gave way to fur. She'd shifted hundreds of times, but never like this. Never with the blood moon's light pouring over her like liquid fire. Never with power crackling through her veins like lightning in her blood. The crowd's murmuring stopped. Silence fell over the courtyard, sharp and sudden. Sherry opened her eyes golden now, instead of her usual brown, and looked down at herself. Her wolf wasn't gray or brown or even the rare black of alpha bloodlines. Her fur glowed like captured starlight, silver white with threads of actual luminescence running through it, pulsing with each breath. Where her paws touched the platform, tiny pinpricks of light spread outward like ripples in water. She was massive, easily the size of a beta male, which should have been impossible for an omega female. And above her, the blood moon's crimson light was changing, shifting, turning silver white to match her fur, its malevolent presence transforming into something else entirely, something blessed, impossible. Someone in the crowd breathed the word like a prayer. Sherry turned her glowing gaze to the ancient temple wall behind the dais. Carved into the stone were prophecies written by the first priestesses, words that hadn't been read in centuries because they'd been sealed behind sacred wards. The wards were breaking. Cracks of light spiderwebbed across the stone, and the ancient text blazed with celestial fire. When the blood moon turns to silver light, the celestial wolf shall rise. She who was cast as lowest shall stand as highest. She who is bound shall break the chains of fate. But beware, the prophecy demands blood, demands sacrifice, demands the union of two who should never meet. The crowd erupted in chaos. Wolves fell to their knees. Others scrambled backward in terror. The high priestess dropped her staff, her ancient eyes wide with shock. And Adrian rose from his throne, with such sudden intensity that his power rolled across the platform like a physical wave, forcing every wolf present into submission. Every wolf, except Sherry. She stood in her glowing celestial form, meeting his gaze across the distance, and felt something snap into place between them. Something ancient and undeniable. Her wolf made a sound deep in her chest, recognition, calling to recognition. The mate bond. It blazed between them, silver white light intertwining with his golden aura, visible to everyone watching. Katina's scream of rage was almost drowned out by the crowd's renewed chaos. Adrian descended the platform steps slowly, never taking his eyes off Sherry. His wolf was close to the surface. She could see it in the way his eyes had gone completely gold, the way power radiated from him in waves. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could feel the heat of him, smell cedar and night air and something wild that called to her very bones. "A celestial wolf," he said quietly. Then, louder, his voice carrying absolute authority. "Everyone out, now." The crowd moved as one, scrambling toward the exits. Nobles and warriors and common wolves who'd come to watch an execution were now fleeing the Alpha King's presence, sensing the predator beneath his skin. Katina lingered near the throne, her hands clenched into fists. "Adrian, you can't possibly." "I said out, Katina." She flinched like he'd struck her. For a moment, Sherry thought she might argue, might try to cling to whatever claim she believed she had on him. But his wolf was too close to the surface, his power too absolute. Katina turned and fled. When the last wolf had cleared the courtyard, Adrian turned back to Sherry. "Shift back, please." The please surprised her. She let her wolf recede, the transformation reversing until she stood human and naked and vulnerable in the center of the platform. Without a word, Adrian shrugged out of his ceremonial cloak and draped it around her shoulders. It swallowed her small frame, still warm from his body, carrying his scent. "What's your name?" His voice was gentler than she'd expected. "Sherry, just Sherry. I don't have a family name." "You do now." He cupped her face in both hands, tilting her chin up so she had to meet his eyes. "You're my mate. The goddess herself just confirmed what my wolf knew the moment you walked onto this platform." His thumbs brushed her cheekbones. "Do you understand what that means?" Sherry shook her head. She could barely process the last 10 minutes, let alone understand ancient mate bonds and prophecies written in stone. "It means," Adrian said slowly, "that everything just changed. For both of us." Behind them, the prophecy carved into the temple wall continued to glow, its final line pulsing with insistent light. "Beware, the prophecy demands the union of two who should never meet." Sherry read the words and felt ice settle in her stomach. "What does that mean?" she whispered. "Two who should never meet." Adrian's expression darkened. "I don't know. But we're going to find out." He pulled her closer, his arms coming around her in a gesture that was both protective and possessive. And despite everything, the trial, the prophecy, the mate bond she didn't understand, Sherry felt something she hadn't felt in 23 years. Safe. Chapter 2. The Celestial Bloodline. The Alpha King's private chambers were nothing like the cold marble temple where Sherry had nearly died. Warm wood paneling, soft furs draped over furniture, a massive fireplace already burning with flames that cast dancing shadows across the walls. Windows looked out over endless forest, and the air smelled of cedar and old leather and safety. Adrian guided her to a chair near the fire, his hand steady on her shoulder. "Sit. I'll get you something to wear that actually fits." Sherry sank into the chair, pulling his cloak tighter around herself. Her legs were shaking, delayed shock from the trial, from the shift, from everything that had just happened. She watched Adrian disappear into an adjoining room, heard him moving around, opening drawers. Her mind kept replaying the moment, the prophecy blazing on the temple wall, the blood moon turning silver, the mate bond snapping into place like a physical thing, tangible and terrifying and impossibly right. Two who should never meet. What did that mean? Why shouldn't they meet? He was the Alpha King, yes, but she was what? A celestial wolf, apparently, whatever that meant. Why would the prophecy warn against their union? Adrian returned with clothing draped over his arm. A soft tunic and pants that would be too big on her, but clean and warm. "The bathing room is through there. Take your time. I'll have food brought up. Thank you." The words felt inadequate for everything he'd done in the last hour. Saving her life. Claiming her as his mate in front of the entire kingdom. Bringing her here instead of leaving her to face the chaos alone. She bathed quickly, washing away the grime of the cell where they'd kept her before the trial, the fear sweat, the blood from where the chains had cut into her wrists. When she emerged dressed in his clothes, drowning in fabric that smelled like him, Adrian had laid out food on a small table. Real food. More than she'd seen in months. Bread and cheese and fruit and roasted meat that made her stomach clench with hunger. "Eat," he said quietly, watching her with those intense golden eyes. "Please. You're too thin." Sherry ate, trying not to cry at the simple kindness of it, trying not to wolf down the food like the starving creature she was. Adrian sat across from her, not eating, just watching with an expression she couldn't read. When she'd taken the edge off her hunger, he leaned forward. "Tell me everything. How did you end up accused of blasphemy? Who have you told about the visions?" "No one." "Not really." Sherry wrapped her hands around a cup of water, needing something to hold. "I've had dreams since I was a child. A woman's voice, kind and ancient, telling me things, showing me glimpses of, I don't know, the future, maybe, the past. I could never tell." She met his gaze. "But I never told anyone except the wolves in the forest, the wild ones who raised me after." She stopped, not sure how much to share. "After what?" Adrian's voice was gentle but insistent. "After I was found as a baby in burned ruins near the northern border. No one claimed me. The pack in that territory said I cried for 3 days before a wild wolf pack came and took me into the woods. The familiar shame tried to rise, but Sherry pushed it down. She wasn't ashamed anymore. Not after what had happened tonight. They raised me, taught me to hunt, to survive. When I was old enough to shift, they showed me how. But my wolf always looked different. Smaller than it should be, weaker." "It wasn't weak," Adrian said firmly. "It was suppressed, starved. No wonder it seemed small. You've been half dead from malnutrition your entire life." Sherry blinked. She'd never thought of it that way. The northern border, 23 years ago. Adrian's expression darkened. That was when the Celestial massacre happened. The what? He stood, moving to the window, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the moonlight, silver now, not red. The blood moon had changed permanently when she'd shifted, as if the prophecy had rewritten the sky itself. "The Celestial bloodline was the most powerful family in our world," Adrian said, his voice tight. "Direct descendants of the first wolves, blessed by the moon goddess herself. They could communicate with her, receive visions and prophecies. Their wolves carried her light." He turned back to face her. "Just like yours." Sherry's breath caught. "But you said massacre. 23 years ago, someone orchestrated their complete annihilation. Every member of the Celestial family was killed in a coordinated attack, burned in their homes, hunted down if they tried to flee. The official story was that rogues did it, random violence." His hands clenched into fists. "But there were rumors, whispers that it was ordered from within the kingdom, that someone feared their power and wanted them eliminated." "Who?" Sherry whispered, though part of her already knew the answer. "My father." Adrian's voice was flat, emotionless. He was Alpha King then. The celestial family lived on the northern border, in territory they'd held for generations. After the massacre, my father declared the land cursed and sealed it. No investigations. No survivors sought. He claimed the moon goddess had withdrawn her favor from them, that their deaths were divine judgment. Sherry felt cold despite the fire's warmth. You think he ordered it? I know he did. Adrian moved back to the table, pulling out a leather-bound book she hadn't noticed before. After you shifted tonight, after the prophecy appeared, I went to the sealed archives. Documents my father locked away under his personal authority. He opened the book, revealing pages of cramped handwriting. Orders to military units. Payment records to mercenaries. Correspondence with his inner council about the celestial problem. He turned the book so she could see. Sherry couldn't read well, the wild wolves hadn't taught her letters, but she recognized dates. Numbers. And at the bottom of one page, a signature. Donovan Robertson. Alpha King. He murdered them because he feared them, Adrian said quietly. Because their connection to the goddess gave them influence he couldn't control. Because people loved them, trusted them more than they trusted the crown. His golden eyes found hers. And if you're the sole survivor, if you were that infant they left behind, then you're the last of the celestial bloodline, the last wolf with the goddess's direct blessing. The implications crashed over Sherry like a wave. That's why Katina accused me. If anyone discovered what I was, they'd have to acknowledge that my father committed genocide against the goddess's chosen bloodline, that the crown is built on murdered innocence. Adrian's jaw tightened. There are wolves in this kingdom who helped him, who profited from celestial lands after they were seized, who've spent 23 years covering up the truth. And now I've exposed everything just by surviving. Yes. He reached across the table, taking her hand in his. Which means you're in danger. Serious danger. The wolves who helped my father won't want you alive. They'll see you as a threat to their power, their positions, their stolen wealth. Sherry should have been terrified. Should have been planning to run, to disappear back into the forest where no one could find her. But her wolf was calm, settled, content in a way it had never been before. Because of him. Because of the mate bond thrumming between them like a living thing. The prophecy, she said suddenly. It mentioned a union. Two who should never meet. What if... She paused, the thought forming slowly. What if it means you and me? The Alpha King and the last Celestial? Adrian's expression shifted, understanding dawning. A union between the bloodline that destroyed the Celestials and the Celestial survivor. It should be impossible. Should never happen. His grip on her hand tightened. But the mate bond doesn't care about politics or history. Maybe that's the point, Sherry whispered. Maybe the goddess chose this specifically. To heal what was broken. To force the kingdom to acknowledge what was done. Before Adrian could respond, heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. 3 sharp knocks on the door. Alpha King, the High Council demands an immediate audience. Adrian's power flared, making the flames in the fireplace gutter. Tell them to wait until morning. They say it cannot wait, my king. They say it concerns the prophecy and the celestial wolf. Sherry watched emotions war across his face, frustration, protectiveness, resignation. Stay here, he told her firmly. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except me. What are they going to say? Probably that you're a threat, that you need to be contained, studied, possibly eliminated if you can't be controlled. His expression turned fierce. They'll try to separate us. Try to claim the mate bond is a trick or an illusion, that I'm being influenced by celestial magic. Are you? The question slipped out before Sherry could stop it. Adrian pulled her to her feet, his hands framing her face. I knew you were mine the moment I saw you on that platform. Before you shifted. Before the prophecy appeared. My wolf recognized yours, and everything else, the celestial light, the goddess's blessing, all of it just confirmed what I already knew. His thumbs brushed her cheekbones. You're not some magical influence, you're my mate. And I will burn this kingdom to ash before I let anyone take you from me. The intensity in his voice, in his eyes, made her breath catch. The mate bond flared between them, warm and certain and utterly undeniable. I believe you, she whispered. He kissed her forehead, gentle despite the barely leashed violence in his posture. Lock the door. I'll be back as soon as I can. Sherry watched him leave, heard the lock click into place from the outside. She moved to the window, looking out at the silver moon, her moon now, apparently, and tried to process everything. 23 years of surviving, of being nothing, no one, invisible to a world that didn't care if she lived or died. And now she was the last celestial. Mate to the Alpha King, the center of a prophecy that had rewritten the sky itself. Her wolf stirred inside her, content but watchful. We're not safe yet, it seemed to say. This is just the beginning. In the distance, Sherry heard raised voices, shouting. The High Council wasn't happy, and she had a feeling tonight was far from over. She touched the window glass, leaving a faint handprint of light that faded slowly. Her celestial power, still settling into her bones, still learning what it could do. Two who should never meet, the prophecy had said. But they had met. The bond was sealed. And whatever came next, whatever dangers waited in the shadows of this kingdom built on lies, they would face it together. The moon seemed to pulse in agreement, and somewhere deep in Sherry's mind, that familiar woman's voice whispered, "The hardest trials are yet to come, little wolf. But you are stronger than you know. Trust the bond. Trust your mate. And when the time comes, trust the choice your heart knows is right, even when duty demands otherwise." Sherry pressed her forehead against the cool glass, and wondered what choice the goddess was talking about. She had a feeling she'd find out soon enough. Chapter 3. The Second Mate. Sherry woke to shouting. She jolted upright in the massive bed where she'd finally fallen asleep hours ago, her heart racing. Gray dawn light filtered through the windows, and the fire had burned down to embers. Adrian's side of the bed was cold. He'd never returned from the council meeting. The shouting was coming from beyond the chamber doors. Multiple voices, angry and afraid. Sherry scrambled out of bed, still wearing the oversized clothes Adrian had given her. She moved to the door, pressing her ear against the wood. Cannot be allowed. She's a threat to the stability of the entire kingdom. The prophecy is clear. We must act before. Silence. Adrian's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. I will not hear another word against my mate. But Alpha King, you must understand. The celestial bloodline was eliminated for a reason. If she truly carries their power, then she carries the goddess's blessing. And you will treat her with the respect that demands. Sherry's hands trembled against the door. They were arguing about her. About what to do with her. And from the sounds of it, some of the council wanted her dead. She was reaching for the lock, when footsteps approached rapidly from the other side. Adrian, please. A woman's voice, low and urgent. Not Katina, someone older. You must listen to reason. The prophecy spoke of a union, yes, but not with you. The ancient texts are clear. The celestial wolf must bond with one of celestial blood, not. I am her mate. The bond is sealed. But what if the bond is wrong? The woman's voice rose with desperation. What if the goddess intended a different pairing? What if by claiming her, you've disrupted the very prophecy we're meant to fulfill? Silence fell. Sherry's breath caught in her throat. Explain, Adrian said finally, his tone dangerous. The prophecy mentions two who should never meet. You assumed it meant you and the celestial wolf, the king and the survivor. But there's another interpretation. Papers rustled. Here, the full translation from the original text. She who was bound shall break the chains of fate, but only when united with he who shares her blessed blood. Two souls of celestial light, divided by time, reunited by destiny. Sherry pressed closer to the door, her wolf stirring uneasily. You're saying she needs a mate from the celestial bloodline, Adrian said slowly. But they're all dead. Not all. The woman's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. We found records. One celestial survived the massacre besides the infant. A boy, 16 at the time, who was away studying with the Northern Pax when the attack happened. He's been living in exile ever since, hiding his true nature, waiting. Waiting for what? For the prophecy to awaken, for the celestial wolf to rise, a pause. For her, Sherry's world tilted. Another celestial, another survivor. Someone who shared her bloodline, her power, her connection to the goddess. Someone the prophecy said she was meant to bond with. Where is he? Adrian's voice was flat, emotionless in a way that made Sherry's skin prickle. We sent for him the moment the prophecy appeared. He should arrive within the hour. The woman hesitated. Alpha King, I know this is difficult. The mate bond you feel is real, I don't question that. But sometimes the goddess's plans require sacrifice. If the prophecy demands she unite with celestial blood to fulfill her destiny, get out. Adrian. I said get out. All of you. Now. Footsteps retreated quickly. Sherry heard doors slam, heard Adrian's ragged breathing on the other side of the wood separating them. Then the lock clicked, and he entered. He looked exhausted. His hair was disheveled, his ceremonial armor gone, replaced by simple dark clothing. But his golden eyes were fierce when they found hers. You heard. It wasn't a question. Sherry nodded, her throat tight. Adrian moved to her in 3 long strides, pulling her against his chest. I don't care what the prophecy says. I don't care if there's another celestial, another potential mate, another destiny the goddess supposedly planned. You're mine. But what if they're right? Sherry whispered against his shoulder. What if the bond between us is interfering with something bigger? What if I'm meant to? Don't. His arms tightened around her. Don't even think it. But she was thinking it, couldn't stop thinking it. The prophecy had been specific, united with he who shares her blessed blood. Adrian didn't have celestial blood. He was powerful, yes. But he was alpha lineage. Dominant and fierce. And absolutely not what the ancient texts described. I need to meet him, she said quietly. The other survivor. I need to know. Adrian pulled back, his expression torn between fury and fear. Know what? If the prophecy is right, if there's a reason the goddess wants me to bond with someone else. She cupped his face in her hands, feeling the mate bond pulse between them warm and real and undeniable. I don't want to. Everything in me says you're mine, that we're meant to be together. But what if we're wrong? What if by staying together, we doom whatever the prophecy is meant to prevent? Then, the world can burn, Adrian said fiercely. I won't give you up. You might not have a choice. The words hung between them, heavy and terrible. Before either could speak again, a commotion erupted in the corridor outside. New voices, unfamiliar, accompanied by the sound of many footsteps. He's here, Adrian said, his jaw tight. The other celestial. Sherry's wolf stirred, suddenly alert. Interested in a way it hadn't been for anyone except Adrian. She felt power approaching different from alpha dominance, but no less potent. Ancient. Otherworldly. Celestial. 3 sharp knocks on the door. Alpha King. Lord Barton has arrived. He requests an audience with the celestial wolf. Adrian's hands clenched into fists at his sides. For a moment, Sherry thought he might refuse. Might lock the door and damn the consequences, damn the prophecy, damn everything except the bond between them. But he was a king before he was her mate. And kings didn't get to put personal desires above their kingdom's survival. Let him in, Adrian said finally. Alone. Just him. The door opened, and a man entered. He was tall, lean, with silver-white hair that fell to his shoulders and eyes that glowed with the same golden light as Sherry's wolf. He wore simple traveling clothes, but he moved with a grace that spoke of power carefully controlled. And when those luminous eyes found Sherry, something in the air shifted. Recognition. Not the mate bond that was specific, unique, impossible to mistake, but something deeper. Older. Like 2 pieces of a broken whole recognizing each other after centuries apart. Hello, Sherry, he said quietly, his voice rich and warm. My name is Nate. And I've been looking for you for 23 years. Sherry couldn't speak. Her wolf was humming with something between curiosity and comfort, like meeting a long-lost sibling. She could feel her celestial power reaching toward his, light calling to light. Adrian growled low in his chest, stepping partially in front of her. You will address her as Lady Sherry. And you will explain exactly what you want with my mate. Nate's gaze shifted to Adrian, and something like sympathy crossed his features. I understand this is difficult, Alpha King. The mate bond is sacred, and I have no wish to interfere with. Then leave, Adrian interrupted. Leave and never come back. I can't do that. Nate's expression turned grave. Because the prophecy isn't just about Sherry and me. It's about all of us. About what's coming. He looked back at Sherry. Have you had visions lately, since you shifted under the blood moon? Sherry nodded slowly. Last night, the goddess spoke to me. She said the hardest trials were yet to come. That I'd have to make a choice. What choice? Adrian demanded. Nate closed his eyes briefly. The same choice I've been preparing for since I learned I wasn't the only survivor. The same choice the prophecy has always demanded. He opened his eyes, and they were filled with ancient sorrow. One of us must die for the prophecy to be fulfilled. The celestial wolf must choose which mate to bond with, the one chosen by fate, or the one chosen by the goddess, and the one not chosen doesn't survive the rejection. The room went deadly silent. Sherry felt the blood drain from her face. What? The prophecy isn't about unity, Nate said quietly. It's about sacrifice. About choosing between personal desire and cosmic duty. The goddess will bless whichever union you choose, but the rejected mate, whether it's me or the Alpha King, will die. The mate bond, once formed, can't be broken without killing one or both parties. And if you choose me, if you bond with celestial blood as the prophecy demands, then your bond with Adrian will destroy him. No. Sherry stumbled backward, shaking her head. No, that's not, the goddess wouldn't. The goddess demands sacrifice, Nate said, his voice gentle but implacable. She always has. The question is, whose sacrifice will it be? Adrian's power exploded through the room, making the walls shake. Get out. Get out before I tear you apart with my bare hands. Nate held his ground, though Sherry could see the effort it cost him to resist Adrian's alpha command. I didn't make these rules, Alpha King. I didn't want this any more than you do. But the prophecy is awakening. The trials are beginning. And soon, very soon, Sherry will have to choose. Then she'll choose me, Adrian snarled. We'll find another way. We'll break the prophecy, change it, rewrite it if we have to. You can't rewrite destiny. Nate turned back to Sherry, and she saw genuine regret in his glowing eyes. I'm sorry. I wish there was another way. But the goddess showed me the same vision she showed you. The choice is coming. And when it does, one of us dies. He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect rather than submission. I'll give you time. Time to come to terms with this, to explore what we might be to each other. But know this, I won't fight for you. I won't try to steal you from your mate. If you choose Adrian, if you choose love over duty, I'll accept that death with grace. His voice dropped. But if the world burns because of that choice, because the prophecy goes unfulfilled, that weight will be yours to carry. He left as quietly as he'd entered, the door clicking shut behind him. Sherry stood frozen, her mind reeling. Adrian pulled her back into his arms, but for the first time, the mate bond felt like a curse instead of a blessing. We'll find another way, he whispered against her hair. I swear to you, we'll find another way. But Sherry had heard the certainty in Nate's voice, had felt the truth of it in her bones, in her celestial power that recognized its mirror in him. The goddess demanded sacrifice, and somehow, Sherry would have to choose who would die. Chapter 4. The First Trial. 3 days passed in a haze of tension and impossible decisions. Adrian kept Sherry close, rarely letting her out of his sight. They took meals together in his chambers, walked the palace gardens under heavy guard, and at night he held her while she pretended to sleep. The mate bond thrummed between them constantly, a reminder of what they stood to lose, what the prophecy demanded they sacrifice. But the visions were getting worse. Every time Sherry closed her eyes, the moon goddess showed her glimpses of what was coming. A great darkness spreading across the land. Wolves screaming. The sky tearing open. And at the center of it all, a choice. 2 paths, 2 futures, one leading to salvation and one to destruction. The goddess never showed her which was which. On the morning of the 4th day, the high priestess summoned them both to the temple. The first trial has been revealed, she said, her ancient eyes grave. The prophecy demands proof of celestial union. You must enter the Starlight Sanctuary with Lord Barton and retrieve the celestial heart, a relic left by your ancestors. Only 2 of celestial blood, working in perfect harmony, can pass the sanctuary's defenses. Sherry felt Adrian tense beside her. And if she refuses? Then the darkness I've seen in my own visions will come, the priestess said simply. The barrier between our world and the void will weaken. In 3 months, maybe less, it will shatter completely. Every wolf in this kingdom will die screaming, as shadow beasts pour through and consume everything. You're saying the prophecy isn't optional, Adrian said flatly. She completes the trials or we all die. The trials must be completed, yes, but remember the prophecy speaks of union, not necessarily of rejecting the mate bond. The priestess's gaze softened slightly. Perhaps there's a way to fulfill both. Perhaps the goddess will show mercy if— The goddess, Adrian interrupted, his voice bitter, seems to specialize in impossible choices. The priestess said nothing. There was nothing to say. 2 hours later, Sherry stood at the entrance to the Starlight Sanctuary with Nate at her side. The sanctuary was built into a mountainside north of the capital, its entrance marked by 2 massive stone wolves whose eyes glowed with celestial light. Ancient wards shimmered in the air, visible only to those with the bloodline to see them. Adrian stood 20 feet behind them, forbidden by the wards from approaching closer. His frustration rolled off him in waves, his golden eyes fixed on Sherry with an intensity that made her chest ache. "Ready?" Nate asked quietly. Sherry nodded, not trusting her voice. She hadn't spoken to him since that first devastating meeting. Hadn't wanted to acknowledge his existence, as if ignoring him might make the prophecy less real. But standing beside him now, she couldn't deny the pull. Not the mate bond that belonged solely to Adrian. This was something else. Something that felt like coming home to a place she'd never been, meeting family she'd never known. Celestial blood calling to celestial blood. "The sanctuary will test us," Nate continued as they approached the entrance. "It needs to see that we can work together, trust each other. Our powers need to synchronize." "I don't know how to use my powers," Sherry admitted. "I only shifted under the blood moon 4 days ago. Before that, my wolf was suppressed." Nate finished gently. "I know. But the power is there, has always been there. You just need to let it surface." He held out his hand. "May I?" Sherry glanced back at Adrian. His jaw was clenched so tight she was surprised his teeth didn't crack. But he nodded once, sharp and controlled. She placed her hand in Nate's. The moment their skin touched, light blazed between them. Silver-white celestial fire that didn't burn but filled her with warmth and recognition and power that made her gasp. She felt Nate's strength flowing into her, his centuries of experience with celestial gifts, his deep connection to the goddess. And he felt hers raw, untrained, but potent in a way that made his eyes widen. "You're stronger than I am," he breathed. "Your connection to the goddess is deeper. I've never felt anything like." The sanctuary doors swung open. They stepped through together, their hands still linked, celestial light illuminating a corridor that hadn't seen living wolves in over 20 years. The walls were carved with scenes from celestial history, wolves with glowing fur standing beside the moon goddess herself. Prophecies written in languages Sherry couldn't read. Battles against shadow creatures that looked disturbingly similar to the darkness in her visions. "Our ancestors built this place as a refuge," Nate explained as they walked deeper. "A sanctuary where celestials could commune with the goddess, where our power was amplified. But it was also a vault. The most sacred relics of our bloodline were stored here, protected by wards that would kill anyone who tried to steal them. And we're here to steal one," Sherry said dryly. "We're here to reclaim what's ours by birthright." Nate's grip on her hand tightened. "The celestial heart is a focusing crystal. It amplifies celestial power 100-fold. With it, we can complete the remaining trials. Without it," he trailed off. "Without it, we fail. The barrier breaks. Everyone dies." Yes. They reached the end of the corridor and emerged into a vast circular chamber. At its center, suspended in a pillar of pure light, hung a crystal the size of Sherry's fist. It pulsed with inner luminescence, and just looking at it made her celestial power surge in response. But between them and the crystal, the floor was covered in ancient symbols that glowed with warning. "The trial," Nate said softly. "We have to cross together. If either of us falls, if our powers desynchronize even for a moment, the wards will activate," and he gestured to scorch marks on the walls. "Well, you can see what happens." Sherry swallowed hard. "And if we make it, then we retrieve the heart. And we move on to the second trial." "Which is?" Nate's expression turned troubled. "Defeating the first shadow beast." It's already manifesting on the eastern border. The barrier is weakening faster than we thought. Sherry looked back toward the entrance, though she couldn't see Adrian from here. She could feel him through the mate bond, his fear for her, his rage at the situation, his helpless desperation to protect her from something he couldn't fight. "I'm sorry," she thought, sending the emotion down the bond. "I'm so sorry." His response came back immediately, fierce and unwavering. "Come back to me. Whatever it takes, come back to me." "Sherry?" Nate's voice pulled her back to the present. "We need to start. The longer we wait, the harder this becomes." She nodded, squaring her shoulders. "Tell me what to do. Feel my power, let yours rise to match it. We need to become one unified force, not two separate beings, but a single celestial entity." He positioned them at the edge of the warded floor. "And whatever you do, don't let go of my hand." They stepped forward together. Immediately, Sherry felt the wards activate. Ancient magic pressed against her skin, testing, probing, searching for weakness. Beside her, Nate's power flared bright, and instinctively she matched him, her own celestial light rising to meet his. The wards accepted them. "One step. 2. Good," Nate murmured. "Keep breathing, keep your power steady." They moved slowly, carefully, across the chamber floor. The symbols beneath their feet glowed brighter with each step, and Sherry could feel the wards trying to separate them, trying to find any crack in their synchronization. Halfway across, something shifted. Sherry felt it like a physical blow, a memory that wasn't hers. A vision of Nate as a 16-year-old boy, returning home to find his entire family slaughtered. His parents, his younger siblings, everyone he'd ever loved, murdered while he was away. The grief hit her like a tidal wave. Her power flickered. "No." Nate's grip on her hand turned crushing. "Stay with me. I know what you're seeing. The wards are pulling memories, trying to break our connection. But you have to push through." Sherry gritted her teeth, fighting against the borrowed grief, the borrowed trauma. She focused on her own memories, the wild wolves who'd raised her, the small kindnesses she'd received from strangers. The moment Adrian's eyes had found hers across the temple platform, her power steadied. They took another step. Another. Then the wards struck at Nate. Sherry felt his power waver, as a new memory surfaced, his memory, but shared through their connection. She saw herself through his eyes, saw herself shifting under the blood moon, celestial light blazing, and felt his recognition, his hope, his devastating knowledge that she was already mated to someone else, his acceptance that he would probably die. The grief in that memory was fresh, current, and it nearly broke their synchronization completely. "I'm sorry," Sherry gasped, her power flaring wildly as she tried to stabilize them both. "I'm so sorry, Nate. I didn't mean to. It's not your fault." His voice was strained but steady. "None of this is your fault. Now focus. We're almost there." The final steps were agony. The wards threw everything at them: fear, doubt, pain, every trauma they'd ever experienced. Sherry saw her parents burning in the celestial massacre, though she'd been too young to remember them consciously. Saw the wild wolves who'd raised her hunted down by cruel humans. Saw Adrian watching her bond with Nate. Saw him dying from the mate bond rejection, his golden eyes going dark as his heart stopped. That last vision nearly destroyed her. But Nate's hand in hers was solid, real, anchoring. His power wrapped around hers like a shield, protecting her from the worst of the ward's assault. And somehow, together, they stayed synchronized. Their feet touched the platform beneath the celestial heart. The wards fell silent. Nate released her hand slowly, and Sherry nearly collapsed. Her entire body was shaking, sweat dripping down her back, her celestial power guttering like a candle in strong wind. "Well done," he said softly. I've never seen anyone withstand the wards that strongly on their first attempt." Sherry couldn't respond. She was too busy trying not to vomit. Nate reached up and took the celestial heart from its pillar of light. The moment his fingers touched the crystal, it flared bright, and his celestial power amplified so dramatically that Sherry could see it radiating from him like a physical aura. He held it out to her. "You should be the one to carry it. Your connection to the goddess is stronger." "I don't want it," Sherry whispered. Because holding the heart meant accepting the trials, accepting the prophecy. accepting that she might have to choose between Adrian and Nate, between love and duty, between two impossible futures. I know. Nate's expression was infinitely gentle. But we don't get to choose our destiny, Sherry. We only get to choose how we face it. She took the crystal. It was warm in her palm, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. The moment her skin touched it, visions flooded her mind, not traumatic memories this time, but glimpses of the future, of what would happen if she failed, of what would happen if she succeeded, of the choice she would have to make, and what it would cost. When the visions faded, Sherry found Nate watching her with knowing eyes. "You saw it," he said, "didn't you? The moment when you'll have to choose." "Yes. And..." Sherry closed her fist around the celestial heart, feeling its power settle into her bones. "And I still don't know what I'm going to do." They walked back across the warded floor in silence. This time, with the heart in Sherry's possession, the wards didn't attack. They simply glowed in acknowledgement as the two celestials passed. Adrian was waiting at the entrance, pacing like a caged predator. The moment Sherry emerged, he was there, pulling her into his arms with enough force to lift her off her feet. "Never again," he growled against her hair. "I'm not letting you out of my sight again." "The second trial," Nate began. "Can wait," Adrian snapped. "She needs rest, food, time to recover. The shadow beast won't wait." Nate's voice was patient but firm. "It's already killed 3 villages on the eastern border. Every day we delay, more wolves die." Adrian's power flared, making the stone wolves flanking the entrance crack. "Then you go fight it. She's done enough." "It requires both of us," Nate said quietly. "I'm sorry, Alpha King, I truly am. But the trials were designed for 2 celestials working in perfect unity. I can't complete them alone, and neither can she." Sherry felt Adrian's arms tighten around her, felt his heart racing against her cheek. The mate bond was screaming with his need to protect her, to keep her safe, to damn the prophecy and everyone who demanded she fulfill it. But she'd seen the visions, seen what would happen if they failed. "How long do I have?" she asked tiredly. "Before we have to face the shadow beast?" 3 days, Nate said. "Maybe 4. After that, it will be too strong. It'll breach the inner territories, and thousands will die." Sherry closed her eyes. 3 days. 3 days to rest, to spend with Adrian, to pretend that the impossible choice wasn't looming over them like an executioner's blade. 3 days, she agreed. "Then we do the second trial." Adrian said nothing. But as he carried her back toward the palace, Sherry felt wetness drip onto her forehead. The Alpha King was crying. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that time was running out. Chapter 5. The Shadow Beast. The 3 days passed too quickly. Adrian didn't leave Sherry's side except when duty absolutely demanded it. They spent hours in his chambers, talking about everything and nothing. Her memories of the wild wolves, his complicated relationship with his father's legacy, the small moments of beauty they'd both found in difficult lives. He taught her to read, patiently guiding her hand across letters, and she taught him the songs the wolves had sung in the forest. At night they held each other in the darkness, the mate bond pulsing between them like a heartbeat. Neither spoke about the choice that was coming. Neither dared to. On the morning of the 4th day, a messenger burst into the breakfast room where they sat. "Alpha King, the shadow beast has breached the inner border. It's heading toward Riverside Village, if it reaches there." The young wolf's voice cracked. "There are 300 people there, women, children. They can't evacuate in time." Adrian was on his feet instantly. "Mobilize the guard. I want every warrior." "Warriors can't kill it," Nate said from the doorway. Neither of them had heard him enter. His celestial eyes were grave. "I've been tracking it for 2 days. It's made of void energy, pure darkness. Regular weapons pass through it like smoke. Only celestial power can destroy it." "Then I'm coming with you," Adrian said flatly. "You can't. The beast feeds on aggressive alpha energy. Your presence will make it stronger." Nate's gaze shifted to Sherry. "It has to be us. The 2 celestials. Now." Sherry stood on shaking legs. She'd known this was coming, but somehow the reality of it still felt like a punch to the gut. "How do we kill it?" "With this." Nate held up the celestial heart. In the daylight, Its glow was even more pronounced. Our combined power, focused through the crystal. But we have to get close enough to strike at its core, and that means one of you could die, Adrian finished, his voice hollow. Yes. Nate didn't sugarcoat it. The beast will fight back. And if our synchronization fails even for a moment, if our powers desync the way they nearly did in the sanctuary, it will tear us apart. Sherry felt Adrian's hand close around hers, desperate and trembling. There has to be another way. There isn't. She turned to face him, memorizing every detail of his face. You know there isn't. Sherry. She kissed him, pouring everything she felt down the mate bond. Love, fear, gratitude, for the brief time they'd had together. I'm coming back to you, I promise. You can't promise that. Then I'm promising to try. She pulled back, even though every instinct screamed at her to stay in his arms. Keep Riverside safe. Keep the people safe. We'll handle the beast. Adrian looked like he wanted to argue, to physically prevent her from leaving. But he was an alpha king before he was her mate, and 300 lives hung in the balance. Come back to me, he said roughly. That's an order. Sherry tried to smile. Yes, Alpha King. They reached Riverside by mid-morning, traveling in wolf form to cover ground faster. Sherry's celestial wolf ran beside Nate's, their powers already beginning to sync in preparation for what was coming. The village was chaos when they arrived. People were fleeing in every direction, screaming, carrying children and possessions. And looming over the northern edge of the settlement was the shadow beast. Sherry had expected something large and monstrous. She hadn't expected this. The creature was easily 40 feet tall, made of darkness so absolute it seemed to swallow light itself. It had no definite shape. Sometimes it looked vaguely wolf-like, sometimes almost humanoid, sometimes just a roiling mass of shadow and hunger. Where it touched buildings, they crumbled. Where it touched people, Sherry looked away from the bodies. Stay focused, Nate said in her mind, the celestial connection between them allowing mental communication. We need to get behind it. The core is at the center of the mass, protected by layers of void energy. We have to burn through the outer layers first. How? Together. They shifted back to human form, and Nate pressed the celestial heart into Sherry's hand. You channel the power. I'll stabilize and amplify. On my mark. Sherry felt her celestial power rise in response to the crystal, felt it magnify 100-fold just as Nate had promised. Light blazed from her palm, silver white and fierce. The shadow beast noticed them. It turned with a sound like grinding stone and screaming wind, and Sherry felt its attention fix on them like a predator spotting prey. Then it charged. Now, Nate shouted. Sherry released the power. A beam of pure celestial light erupted from the crystal, striking the shadow beast's center mass. The creature shrieked a sound that made her ears bleed and recoiled. Where the light touched it, darkness burned away, revealing something almost solid beneath. Again, Nate's power wrapped around hers, amplifying, focusing. Keep hitting the same spot. Sherry poured more energy into the crystal. More. Her vision started to blur at the edges, her body shaking with the effort. But the darkness was burning away, layer by layer, revealing the core beneath. The shadow beast lashed out with a tendril of void energy. Nate shoved her aside, taking the hit meant for her. He flew backward 20 feet, slamming into a building wall hard enough to crack stone. Nate. Sherry's power wavered. Don't stop. His mental voice was strained but fierce. I'm fine. Keep burning through the layers. But the beast was adapting. It split into 3 separate forms, surrounding them, attacking from multiple angles. Sherry couldn't target all of them at once, couldn't maintain the focused beam while defending herself. They were going to fail. Then she felt it, a surge of power that wasn't hers, wasn't Nate's. The mate bond, blazing like the sun. Adrian had shifted to his alpha form miles away, and he was sending her every ounce of strength he had through their connection. Sherry gasped as the power flooded her. Not celestial, but raw and fierce, and absolutely Adrian. She felt his love, his faith in her, his absolute certainty that she would survive this. The celestial heart flared bright enough to rival the sun. Sherry didn't consciously decide what to do next. Her celestial power and Adrian's alpha strength combined, flowing through the crystal, and erupted outward in a sphere of pure annihilating light. The shadow beast didn't stand a chance. All three forms burned away simultaneously, darkness evaporating like morning mist. At the center, where the core had been, something crystalline and corrupt shattered with a sound like breaking glass. Then silence. Sherry collapsed to her knees, the celestial heart falling from nerveless fingers. Every muscle in her body screamed. Her celestial power was guttering, nearly extinguished from the effort. But the beast was dead. Nate limped toward her, blood dripping from a cut above his eye. How did you do that? That wasn't just celestial power, that was something else. The mate bond, Sherry managed. Adrian sent me his strength. Nate's expression shifted surprise, understanding, and something that looked like hope. Alpha energy, combined with celestial power. That shouldn't be possible. The bloodlines don't mix. They're fundamentally incompatible. Apparently they're not. Sherry tried to stand and nearly fell. Nate caught her, steadying her. What does that mean? I don't know. But… He paused, his celestial eyes distant. The prophecy. Two who should never meet. What if it wasn't about you and me? What if it was about celestial power and alpha bloodlines, two forces that should be incompatible but in you and Adrian? He stopped as understanding crashed over them both. The union the prophecy demands. Sherry whispered. It's not you and me. It's celestial power and alpha strength. Combined. United. Through the mate bond. Nate's grip on her arm tightened. Sherry, if that's true, if the prophecy can be fulfilled through you and Adrian working together, then no one has to die. They stared at each other in the ruins of Riverside, hope and disbelief warring in both their expressions. We need to test it, Nate said finally. The third trial. If you can complete it with Adrian instead of me, if your mate bond can substitute for celestial unity, then the prophecy was mistranslated, Sherry finished. The union it demands isn't romantic. It's a union of power. And I don't have to be your mate. Nate's voice cracked slightly. I can just be your brother. Your family. The way we should have been if… He stopped, clearing his throat. If our families had survived. Sherry felt tears sting her eyes. Not just for herself, not just for Adrian, but for Nate. For the lonely decades he'd spent in exile, believing he would have to die, or watch her die. Believing the prophecy demanded one of their deaths. Family, she said softly. I've never had family before. Not really. You do now. Nate pulled her into a careful embrace, not romantic, just the fierce grip of one survivor holding on to another. Whatever happens, whatever the third trial demands, you're not alone anymore. A roar echoed across the valley. Adrian still miles away, but coming fast. She could feel him through the bond, could feel his desperate need to reach her, to see her alive and whole. Go to him, Nate said, releasing her. I'll handle the cleanup here. Explain to the villagers what happened. His celestial eyes were warm. And Sherry? Thank you. For what? For finding a way to save all of us, even when the prophecy said it was impossible. Sherry met Adrian halfway between Riverside and the palace, both of them in wolf form, both running flat out. They collided with enough force to send them tumbling across the grass, a tangle of fur and relief and desperate affection. You're alive, Adrian's mental voice was ragged. I felt the power drain through the bond, thought you'd. I'm here. I'm safe. She shifted back to human, and he followed. And then they were holding each other so tightly she could barely breathe. We found a way. She gasped against his shoulder. Nate and I. We figured it out. The prophecy doesn't require me to bond with him. It requires celestial power and alpha strength to unite. Through us. Through the mate bond. Adrian pulled back to look at her, hope and disbelief warring in his golden eyes. Are you certain? No. But we killed the shadow beast, using your power combined with mine. That shouldn't be possible if the bloodlines are incompatible. If we're not meant to work together. The third trial, Adrian said slowly. If we complete it together, then we prove the prophecy can be fulfilled without anyone dying. Sherry cupped his face in her hands. We get to keep each other. And Nate gets to live. Everyone survives. What's the third trial? Sherry's expression sobered. I don't know yet. But whatever it is, we face it together. Adrian kissed her, fierce and possessive, and infinitely gentle. Together, he agreed. No matter what comes. They held each other in the grass as the sun moved across the sky, the mate bond singing between them. For the first time since the blood moon trial, Sherry let herself believe they might actually survive this. But in the back of her mind, the moon goddess's voice whispered a warning. The third trial will test you in ways you cannot imagine, little wolf. And when it comes, you will learn that some choices cannot be escaped. Some sacrifices must be made. Prepare yourself for what is coming. Prepare yourself to lose everything you love. Sherry held Adrian tighter and tried not to hear. Chapter 6. The Betrayal. The celebration in the capital was subdued but genuine. News of the Shadow Beast's defeat had spread quickly, and while 300 lives had been saved in Riverside, the cost had been visible: destroyed buildings, traumatized survivors, and the lingering knowledge that more beasts could appear if the barrier continued to weaken. But for one night, the kingdom allowed itself to hope. Sherry stood on the balcony of Adrian's chambers, watching torches flicker in the streets below. Behind her, she could hear Adrian discussing defense strategies with his commanders, making plans to evacuate border villages if another beast manifested. She fingered the celestial heart, where it hung on a chain around her neck. The crystal pulsed gently against her skin, warm and alive, amplifying her celestial power even at rest. You should be celebrating. Nate's voice came from the doorway. You saved 300 lives today. We saved them, Sherry corrected. I couldn't have done it without you. He moved to stand beside her at the railing, his silver-white hair catching the moonlight. But it was your power that killed it. Your connection to Adrian that made the impossible combination work. He smiled slightly. I was just moral support. Important moral support. She glanced at him. Have you heard anything? About the third trial? The High Priestess is researching it. The old texts are fragmented, contradictory. But she thinks it will manifest soon. Within the week, maybe less. His expression turned serious. Sherry, there's something you should know. About the trials. What? They're not random. Each one is designed to test a specific aspect of celestial power. The first trial tested synchronization, our ability to work in perfect harmony. The second tested our combat strength, our ability to channel destructive force. He paused. The third trial always tests sacrifice. The willingness to give up what we love most for the greater good. Ice settled in Sherry's stomach. The goddess warned me about that. In my visions, she said I'd have to lose everything I love. Maybe. Nate's voice was careful. Or maybe she was warning you about the choice itself. The difficulty of it. That doesn't mean you'll fail. Before Sherry could respond, shouting erupted from inside the chambers. Adrian's voice, sharp with anger, followed by other voices urgent, afraid. They rushed inside to find Adrian surrounded by his commanders, all talking at once. What's happened? Sherry demanded. Adrian's face was carved from stone. The eastern border has fallen. Not to shadow beasts, to rogues. Hundreds of them, organized and equipped like a military force. They've taken 3 villages in the last 2 hours. That's impossible, Nate said sharply. Rogues don't organize. They're solitary by nature. Unstable. These aren't random rogues. One of the commanders, a grizzled beta with scars across his face, spread a map on the table. They're wearing uniforms, using coordinated tactics, and they're led by someone with enough power to force compliance from unstable wolves. Who? Sherry asked, though dread was already coiling in her stomach. We don't know. But they're asking for you. The commander's gaze shifted to her. They're demanding the celestial wolf surrender herself, or they'll start executing civilians. Silence fell over the room. Absolutely not, Adrian said flatly. We mobilized the army. We crushed them before. They have hostages, another commander interrupted. Over 100 civilians from the conquered villages. They've made it clear any military approach and the hostages die. Sherry felt the blood drain from her face. This is about me. They're using innocent people as leverage to draw you out, Nate finished grimly. Someone knows about the prophecy, knows that separating you from Adrian weakens both of you. Or they know that you're the only one who can stop whatever's coming, Adrian countered. He moved to Sherry, gripping her shoulders. This is a trap. An obvious trap. You can't go. If I don't, those people die. If you do, you die. We don't know that. But even as she said it, Sherry knew he was right. Someone had organized this attack specifically to capture or kill her. Someone who understood celestial power enough to know that taking her out of the equation would doom the kingdom. Who would benefit from your death? Nate asked quietly. Who gains if the prophecy fails? The question hung in the air. Someone who wants the barrier to fall, Adrian said slowly. Someone who wants the shadow beasts to destroy the kingdom. But why? Sherry shook her head. What could anyone possibly gain from power? The voice came from the doorway, cold and familiar. They all turned to see Vonda Stokes standing in the entrance. She wore dark traveling clothes and a smile that made Sherry's skin crawl. Behind her, 2 guards lay unconscious on the floor. Hello, Celestial Wolf, she said pleasantly. I've been waiting a long time to meet you. Adrian's power exploded through the room. How dare you enter my chambers uninvited? Guards, they can't hear you. Vonda raised one hand, and shadows flickered at her fingertips. Not celestial light, not alpha power, but something else entirely. Something dark and wrong. I've warded this room, no sound in or out, no one can interrupt us. What are you? Nate stepped in front of Sherry, his celestial power flaring. A servant of the true gods. The old gods, who ruled before your precious moon goddess, stole their power and locked them beyond the barrier. Vonda's smile widened. The same gods who will return when that barrier finally shatters. Comprehension crashed over Sherry like ice water. You want the prophecy to fail. You want the shadow beasts to break through. I want the world as you know it to end, Vonda corrected. And when the old gods return, when they remake this realm in their image, I will be rewarded beyond measure for my service. You organized the rogue attack, Adrian said, his voice deadly quiet. You're using hostages to lure Sherry into a trap. Clever, Alpha. Vonda's shadows coiled around her like living things. But it's so much worse than that. You see, I've been in this palace for months, watching, waiting, learning your routines, your weaknesses, your precious mate bond. She turned her gaze to Sherry. And I've discovered something fascinating. The third trial doesn't just test sacrifice, it tests loyalty. What are you talking about? Sherry demanded. The third trial requires you to choose between saving your mate and saving the kingdom. One or the other, not both. Vonda's smile turned vicious. And I've arranged things so that choice comes tonight. Right now, in fact. She gestured, and the shadows in the room coalesced into images, visions of 2 locations simultaneously. On the left, Sherry saw the eastern border, saw the hostages surrounded by rogues, saw children crying and wolves preparing to execute innocent people. On the right, she saw the palace dungeons, saw Adrian chained to a wall with shadow magic wrapped around him like a parasite, slowly draining his life. What? Adrian staggered, his hand going to his chest. What did you do to me? That's not you, Nate said sharply. That's a projection. She's showing us the future. Not the future, Vonda corrected. The present. Right now. The real Alpha King is waking up in those dungeons with void magic eating him alive. The man standing in this room is an illusion. A projection I created to keep you distracted, while my associates moved the real king into position. Sherry felt the mate bond suddenly constrict, felt pain lance through her chest. Adrian, the real Adrian, was hurting, dying. You're lying, she gasped. Am I? The illusion of Adrian flickered, becoming translucent. The poison I used is specifically designed for alpha bloodlines. It mimics mate bond sensations, which is why you didn't notice the substitution. But now that I've revealed the truth, your bond can sense him, can feel him dying. Sherry's knees buckled. The mate bond was screaming now, agony pouring through it as Adrian fought against the void poison in his system. Nate caught her, his face grim. How do we save him? You can't, not directly. Vonda's shadows swirled. But Sherry can. She has 2 choices. Choice 1. Use the celestial heart to purge the void poison from Adrian. Save her mate's life. But if she does that, she won't have enough power left to stop the rogue attack. The hostages will die, and the rogues will use their deaths to perform a ritual that will shatter the barrier completely. Shadow beasts will pour through, and the kingdom falls. And choice 2? Sherry forced the words out through gritted teeth. Choice 2. Use the celestial heart to destroy the rogues and save the hostages. Stop the ritual. Preserve the barrier. But without the heart's power to purge the poison, Adrian will die within the hour. The mate bond will kill you shortly after. Rejected mates rarely survive more than a day or two. That's not a choice, Nate snarled. That's the third trial, Vonda finished. Choose your mate and doom the kingdom. Choose the kingdom and lose everything you love. There is no third option, no clever solution. Just sacrifice. She stepped backward into shadows that shouldn't exist inside a well-lit room. You have 1 hour, Celestial Wolf. Choose wisely. She vanished, taking her illusions with her. The wards around the room shattered. And suddenly Sherry could hear guards pounding on the door, shouting for the Alpha King. But Adrian wasn't here. He was in the dungeons, dying. And she had to choose. We break the pattern, Nate said urgently, gripping her arms. We refuse to play her game. We save Adrian first. Then the hostages die and the barrier falls, Sherry whispered. She planned this perfectly. Timed it so there's no way to save both. There's always a way. We just have to. There isn't. Sherry pulled away from him, her mind racing. The mate bond was a constant scream of agony. Adrian's pain echoing through her body. She could feel him trying to break free, feel the void poison spreading through his system like ice. She had an hour, maybe less. One choice would save the man she loved, the other would save the kingdom. And the moon goddess had warned her this would come. Had told her she would have to lose everything. Sherry, don't, Nate said, reading the expression on her face. Don't make this choice alone. We'll find another way. There is no other way. She pulled the celestial heart from around her neck, feeling its power pulse against her palm. This is the third trial. This is what the goddess meant. She met Nate's celestial eyes and saw her own anguish reflected there. I can't let the kingdom fall, she whispered. Even for him. Even knowing it will kill me. Sherry, promise me you'll watch over him after. After I'm gone. Promise me you'll help him rebuild. Help him lead. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Promise me he won't be alone. Nate's face crumpled. Please don't do this. There has to be another way. But they both knew there wasn't. The third trial demanded sacrifice. And Sherry had just made her choice. Chapter 7. The Price of Love. Sherry ran through the palace corridors with Nate at her side, the celestial heart blazing in her fist. Guards scrambled out of their way, and servants pressed against walls as the two celestials raced toward the eastern gate. Every step felt like tearing her heart in two. Through the mate bond, she could feel Adrian weakening, could feel the void poison spreading like frost through his veins. His consciousness was fading, and with it, the connection that had been the first real love she'd ever known. I'm sorry, she sent down the bond, knowing he probably couldn't hear her anymore. I'm so sorry. But I can't let innocent people die. I can't let the kingdom fall. No response came back. Just pain and darkness, and the slow, terrible silence of a dying mate. There's still time to turn back, Nate said as they burst through the eastern gate. We could split up. I'll go to the border. You save Adrian. You can't destroy the rogues alone. You said it yourself, it takes two celestials working together to generate enough power. Sherry's wolf form erupted around her as she shifted mid-stride. Nate matched her, and they ran side by side toward the border, their celestial fur glowing in the darkness. He's my brother by circumstance. Nate's mental voice was thick with grief. But he's your mate. Your soul-bonded partner. Losing him will destroy you. Losing 300 innocent people would destroy me more, Sherry sent back. And if the barrier falls, if shadow beasts pour through, millions die. Not just hundreds, millions. The goddess is cruel to demand this choice. Maybe. Or maybe she's testing whether I can be what the kingdom needs, someone who puts others before herself, even when it costs everything. They reached the border in less than an hour, their celestial speed carrying them faster than any normal wolf could run. The scene that greeted them was worse than the visions had shown. The rogues had organized themselves into military formations around 3 villages. At the center of their encampment, hostages were chained in a large circle, men, women, children, elders. Over 200 souls, not the 100 they'd been told. and surrounding the circle, rogues stood with weapons raised, ready to kill at a signal. At the head of the formation stood a massive wolf in partial shift, half human, half beast, his face twisted with dark magic. When he saw Sherry and Nate approaching, he laughed. "The celestial wolf arrives." His voice boomed across the clearing. "Right on schedule. Vonda said you'd choose the kingdom over your mate. Said you'd make the noble sacrifice." Sherry shifted back to human form, Nate doing the same beside her. "Let the hostages go. Your fight is with me." "Oh, we'll let them go." The rogue leader gestured to his forces. "Right after you're dead, and the ritual is complete. You see, your death alone isn't enough to shatter the barrier. But your death combined with the life force of 200 innocents, all sacrificed while a celestial watches helplessly." His grin widened. His grin. "That will tear the barrier wide open." "You're going to kill them anyway," Nate said flatly. "Obviously. But we needed you here to witness it. Needed your celestial despair to fuel the ritual." The rogue leader raised his hand, and shadows began to gather around the hostage circle. "The moment you die, we begin. And there's nothing you can do to stop it." Sherry's mind raced. She'd walked into exactly the trap Vonda had set. If she destroyed the rogues now, saved the hostages, Adrian would die. But if she tried to save Adrian first, the rogues would complete their ritual and doom the kingdom anyway. Unless, Nate, she sent through their celestial connection, the celestial heart, can it be split? Can we each use half of its power? Theoretically, yes. But it would take time to divide, time to attune each half to. How much time? Minutes. Maybe 5. If we're fast. 5 minutes. Adrian had maybe 20 left. If the void poison continued spreading at its current rate. If they took 5 minutes to split the heart. She could race back to the palace. Use half its power to purge the poison. Nate could use the other half to destroy the rogues. It was possible. Barely. But there was a problem. If we split the heart, neither half will be strong enough to fully accomplish its task, Nate continued, his mental voice heavy. I might be able to destroy most of the rogues, but not all. And a weakened heart might not fully purge the void poison. You'd save Adrian's life, but he'd be permanently damaged. Unable to shift, unable to access his alpha power. Sherry's breath caught. A king who couldn't shift, couldn't command his wolves through alpha dominance, he'd be forced to abdicate, would lose everything that made him who he was. And the rogues I can't destroy will complete the ritual, Nate added. It might take them longer without their full force. But eventually days, maybe weeks, they'll shatter the barrier. So splitting the heart meant saving Adrian's life but destroying his power. Meant delaying the barrier's collapse but not preventing it. Meant failing both trials partially instead of succeeding at one completely. What do I do? Sherry's mental voice cracked. What's the right choice? I don't know, Nate admitted. But whatever you decide, decide fast. We're running out of time. Through the mate bond, Sherry felt Adrian's consciousness flicker. He was dying. Right now, in this moment, he was slipping away from her. She looked at the hostages, saw children crying, saw mothers holding their babies close, saw fear and resignation, and the terrible acceptance of death in their eyes. She looked at the celestial heart in her hand, pulsing with enough power to save one group or the other. Not both, never both. And she made her choice. Nate, she said aloud, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. Take the heart. All of it. Destroy the rogues. Save the hostages. Sherry, no. Adrian would want this. He'd make the same choice if he were standing here. She pressed the crystal into Nate's hand, closing his fingers around it. Save them. Save the kingdom. That's what a true king would do. That's what he's spent his whole life doing, putting his people first. You'll die, Nate whispered, when the mate bond breaks. I know. Sherry smiled through her tears. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the sacrifice the prophecy demands isn't just Adrian. Maybe it's me too. The celestial wolf, giving everything to save her people. The rogue leader was shouting something, ordering his forces to attack, but Sherry barely heard him. She was too focused on the mate bond, on sending one final message down its fading length. I love you, Adrian. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. But I saved them. I saved our kingdom. And wherever you are after this, whatever comes next, I'll find you. In this life or the next, I'll find you. For one brief, impossible moment, she felt a response. Weak. Barely there. But unmistakable. Adrian's consciousness. Surfacing one last time. Proud of you, the feeling said. So proud. My brave, beautiful mate. Then the bond went silent. Sherry collapsed to her knees as agony unlike anything she'd ever known tore through her chest. The mate bond, severed by death, was ripping her apart from the inside. She could feel her wolf howling in anguish, could feel her celestial power guttering like a candle in a storm. She was dying, but she'd made her choice. And she'd make it again. Now, Nate roared, the celestial heart blazing in his hand. Get away from the hostages. The rogue leader snarled and lunged, but Nate was faster. Celestial light erupted from the crystal in a dome of pure annihilating power, expanding outward with Sherry and Nate at its center. Sherry watched through dimming vision as the light consumed the rogues. Watched them burn away like shadows at noon, their dark magic unable to withstand the full force of celestial fury. The ritual circle shattered. The hostages, protected by Nate's precise control, were untouched. 200 innocent lives saved. The barrier preserved. The kingdom safe. Sherry smiled as darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. She'd done it. She'd passed the third trial, even if passing meant dying. Adrian, she thought as consciousness faded. I'm coming to find you. Then the world went black. Sherry woke to blinding light. She sat up gasping, expecting to be dead, expecting to find herself in whatever afterlife awaited wolves. Instead, she was lying in grass, surrounded by silver moonlight so bright it hurt to look at. Hello, little wolf. The moon goddess stood before her, beautiful and terrible and impossibly ancient. Her form shifted between solid and translucent, between wolf and woman in pure light. You did well. I'm dead, Sherry said flatly. I felt the mate bond break. You felt him die, yes, and you accepted your own death as consequence. The goddess knelt beside her, and up close, her eyes were kind. But the third trial was never about choosing who dies, child. It was about choosing to sacrifice yourself, choosing to put others first, even when it meant losing everything you love. Sherry stared at her. I don't understand. The third trial tests the purity of your heart, tests whether you truly embody what celestial wolves are meant to be: protectors, guardians, willing to give everything for those weaker than themselves. The goddess touched Sherry's chest, right over her heart. You passed, and because you passed, because you were willing to sacrifice even your mate for the greater good, I am permitted to intervene. Intervene how? To give you back what you gave up, the goddess smiled. Your mate is not dead, Sherry. He's dying, yes, but while you lay here at the threshold of death, time moves differently. In the mortal world, only seconds have passed. There's still time. Hope, desperate and painful, surged through Sherry. But the celestial heart, Nate, has it. You don't need the heart. The goddess placed her hand over Sherry's, and suddenly Sherry felt power flowing into her. Not amplified through a crystal, not borrowed from anyone else, but her own celestial power, magnified 1,000-fold by the goddess's direct blessing. You passed the trial. You proved yourself worthy. And worthy celestials receive my full blessing, child. Everything your ancestors once wielded, everything the celestial bloodline was meant to be, it's yours now. Sherry felt the power settling into her bones, felt her wolf growing stronger, felt something fundamental shift in her very nature. She was still herself, but more, complete in a way she'd never been before. Go, the goddess said gently. Save your mate. Live the life you've earned. And when the time comes, when new trials arrive, as they always do, remember this moment. Remember that sacrifice is never truly in vain. The bright light faded, and Sherry found herself back in her body at the border. Nate was kneeling beside her, his face streaked with tears, the celestial heart still blazing in his hand. Sherry. He pulled her upright. You stopped breathing, I thought. How long? Her voice was stronger than it should be, filled with new power. Maybe 30 seconds. The mate bond is still there, but barely. Adrian's almost. Give me the heart. It won't be enough now. Not after you. I don't need it to be enough. Sherry stood, her celestial power blazing bright enough to rival Nate's amplified light. The goddess blessed me. I can save him. She shifted to her wolf form, and Nate gasped. Her celestial fur wasn't just glowing anymore, it was luminous, radiant, carrying actual starlight woven through every strand. She was larger than before, more powerful, ancient divinity made manifest in mortal form. Stay and help the hostages, she sent to Nate. I'm going to get my mate. Then she ran. She covered the distance back to the palace in minutes, celestial speed carrying her faster than thought. She burst through the doors to the dungeons, following the mate bond's fading thread, and found Adrian exactly where the visions had shown him, chained to the wall, void poison spreading through his veins like black ice. His golden eyes closed, his breathing shallow, his consciousness barely present, but alive. Barely, desperately, impossibly alive. Sherry shifted back to human form and pressed her hands to his chest, letting her newly amplified celestial power pour into him. Light blazed between them, silver white purging black, life burning away death. The void poison fought back, tried to consume her light. But Sherry was stronger now, blessed by the goddess herself. And she'd already died once tonight. She wasn't about to lose Adrian too. The poison burned away like morning mist. Adrian's eyes snapped open, golden and alive and filled with disbelief. Sherry? His voice was hoarse. How are you? I chose the kingdom, she said, tears streaming down her face. I let you die. I felt you die. But the goddess, she gave you back. She gave us back. Adrian's chains shattered as his alpha power surged back. He pulled her against him. Both of them shaking. Both of them crying. The mate bond blazing bright and whole and absolutely unbreakable. Never again, he growled against her hair. Never make me watch you choose death again. I'll try, Sherry whispered. But I can't promise, not if it means saving people. He pulled back to look at her, and despite everything, the pain, the fear, the impossible choice she'd made, he smiled. That's what makes you worthy. That's what makes you mine. He kissed her then, fierce and claiming and infinitely gentle. And somewhere in the heavens, Sherry swore she heard the moon goddess laugh with approval. The third trial was complete. They had survived the impossible choice. And whatever came next, they would face it together. Chapter 8. The Hunt for Vonda. The palace was in chaos when they emerged from the dungeons. Guards ran in every direction, searching for the Alpha King, searching for threats. Someone had discovered the unconscious guards outside Adrian's chambers and raised the alarm. Adrian's power rolled through the palace like a thunderclap, forcing every wolf into instant submission. I'm alive. His voice boomed, carrying to every corner of the structure. Stand down. Assemble the council in the throne room immediately. We have a traitor to hunt. Within minutes, the throne room was packed. Council members, commanders, nobles, everyone who held any power in the kingdom. They stared at Adrian and Sherry with a mixture of relief and fear. The story of what had happened at the border was already spreading. The celestial wolf who'd chosen duty over love. The Alpha King who'd survived void poison that should have killed him within minutes. And somewhere in this crowd, Sherry knew, were other traitors, other servants of the old gods who'd helped Vonda orchestrate her trap. Vonda Stokes attempted to murder me, Adrian said without preamble, his golden eyes scanning the assembled wolves. She used void magic, forbidden, dark magic that serves entities beyond our world. She coordinated with rogues to attack our border. She attempted to shatter the barrier and doom this kingdom to destruction. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some shocked, some afraid. A few, Sherry noticed, were too carefully controlled. Too unsurprised. Anyone who aided her will be shown no mercy, Adrian continued. Anyone who knew of her plans and failed to report them will be considered complicit. And anyone foolish enough to continue serving the old gods after tonight will be executed for treason. His power intensified. Now, who wants to confess before I start digging through your minds? Silence. Then, she couldn't have done this alone. Katina pushed through the crowd, her green eyes blazing. Vonda was on the council for 2 years. She had access to everything, defense plans, patrol schedules, the Alpha King's private chambers. Someone else had to know. Someone had to help her. For once, Sherry agreed with her. Katina might be jealous and bitter about the broken betrothal, but she wasn't stupid. And her family had served the crown for generations. Whatever her personal feelings, she wouldn't betray the kingdom. The wards, Nate said quietly from where he stood beside Sherry. He'd arrived shortly after them, having settled the rescued hostages in temporary shelter. Vonda used shadow magic to ward Adrian's chambers. That kind of magic requires anchors, physical objects placed in specific locations. Someone had to help her plant them. Adrian's expression turned predatory. Search the chambers. Now. Tear them apart if you have to. Guards rushed from the throne room. The assembled wolves shifted uncomfortably, everyone suddenly aware that they were all suspects. Sherry closed her eyes and let her newly amplified celestial power expand. The goddess's blessing had done more than just increase her strength, it had sharpened her senses, her connection to the divine. She could feel the presence of dark magic now, could sense its corruption like a stain on her awareness. And she felt it. Faint but present. Coming from someone in this very room. Her eyes snapped open, scanning the crowd. There a small woman in servant's clothes standing near the back, trying to make herself invisible. But her aura reeked of shadow magic, of void energy, of the same corruption that had nearly killed Adrian. Her, Sherry said, pointing. She's marked by the same magic Vonda used. The woman's eyes widened in panic. She bolted for the door. She made it 3 steps before Nate intercepted her, his celestial speed allowing him to cross the room in a heartbeat. He pinned her against the wall with one hand, his power making her whimper. Name, Adrian commanded. I didn't. Name, he repeated, his alpha voice crushing her resistance. Eileen, the woman gasped. Eileen Lozano. I'm just a servant. I didn't know what she was doing. I swear. Liar. Sherry moved closer, her celestial power pressing against Eileen's aura. You planted the ward anchors. I can see them on you, shadow marks where you touched the cursed objects. 4 of them. When did you place them? Eileen's resolve crumbled under the combined pressure of celestial and alpha power. 2 days ago. Vonda, she said it was just a privacy spell. Said the Alpha King wanted it for his chambers. I didn't know it was dark magic, I swear. But you knew something was wrong, Nate said quietly. You felt the corruption in the objects. You felt the wrongness. And you placed them anyway. Tears streamed down Eileen's face. She said she'd kill my family if I didn't help. Said the old gods would consume them if I refused. I had no choice. There's always a choice, Adrian said coldly. You could have come to me. You could have warned someone. Instead, you helped a traitor nearly destroy this kingdom. He turned to his guards. Take her to the cells. She'll stand trial once we've captured Vonda. As they dragged Eileen away, another figure pushed through the crowd. An older man, distinguished in council robes, his face grave. Alpha King, there's something you should know. He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. Vonda wasn't acting alone. She had support from outside the kingdom. Explain, Adrian demanded. 3 months ago, a delegation arrived from the northern wastes, claiming to be representatives of scattered rogue packs, seeking to negotiate for territory. We granted them an audience, allowed them to stay at an inn on the outskirts of the capital while we considered their proposal. Sherry felt dread coiling in her stomach. Let me guess. Vonda met with them. Repeatedly. We thought nothing of it at the time she was on the council. It was her duty to gather information about potential allies or threats. The man's expression darkened, but looking back, the timing is suspicious. The delegation arrived just before the first shadow beast manifested, just before the prophecy about the celestial wolf awakening. Where are they now? Nate asked sharply. Gone. They left the capital yesterday, before the border attack, claimed they were returning north to report to their pack leaders. He paused. But I have sources in the city. They didn't go north. They went east, toward the ruins of the old celestial settlement. Sherry's blood ran cold. Why would they go there? Because that's where the barrier is weakest, Nate said grimly. The celestial massacre created a wound in the fabric between our world and the void. My family's deaths, all that pain and terror concentrated in one place. It's been festering for 23 years. If someone wanted to tear the barrier open completely, that's where they'd do it. Adrian's jaw clenched. How many in the delegation? 12. All powerful rogues, possibly alphas themselves. And Vonda makes 13. Sherry said quietly. She looked at Adrian. We have to stop them. If they complete whatever ritual they're planning at the ruins, the barrier shatters, shadow beasts pour through, and the kingdom falls. Adrian's expression was grim. How long do we have? The ruins are a day's journey at normal speed, Nate said. If they left yesterday and we leave now, we might catch them before they begin. Then we leave now. Adrian turned to his commanders. Mobilize 50 of our best warriors. Fast strikers, wolves who can fight and move quickly. We travel light and we travel fast. Alpha King, you can't lead this mission personally. One of the council members protested. Then my second will take command. But I'm not sending my mate into danger without me. Not again. Adrian's tone brooked no argument. We leave within the hour. Anyone who tries to stop me can challenge me for the position. Any takers? Silence. No one was stupid enough to challenge an Alpha King whose mate had just faced death for him. Good. Dismissed. An hour later, they stood at the palace gates with their strike force assembled. 50 wolves in fighting form. Armed and ready. Adrian had insisted Sherry ride with him rather than run. She'd used enormous amounts of power tonight, and despite the goddess's blessing, she needed to conserve her strength for what was coming. Katina appeared at the last moment, dressed in light armor. I'm coming with you. Like hell you are. Adrian said flatly. My family served yours for 3 generations. Vonda betrayed that service, betrayed everything we stand for. Katina's green eyes were fierce. I won't let her ruin my family's name. I'm coming. You hate me, Sherry pointed out. Yes, you took the position that should have been mine. Katina's expression was cold but honest. But I love this kingdom more than I hate you. And if stopping Vonda means fighting beside you, then that's what I'll do. Nate studied her for a moment, his celestial senses apparently reading something in her aura. She's telling the truth. She means it. Adrian looked like he wanted to argue, but time was running out. Fine. But you follow orders. And if you do anything to endanger my mate, you'll tear me apart. I understand. Katina's smile was humorless. Message received, Alpha King. They moved out as the moon reached its peak. 50 wolves running through the darkness with 2 celestials and an Alpha King at their head. Sherry rode on Adrian's massive alpha wolf, her arms around his neck, feeling his strength beneath her. The mate bond hummed between them, steady and strong and absolutely unbreakable. Thank you, she sent down the bond. For understanding why I had to choose the way I did. I hated it, he sent back honestly. Hated knowing you were willing to let me die. But I understood. And I would have made the same choice if our positions were reversed. A pause. That's what makes us right for each other. We both know that some things are worth dying for. Let's try not to die tonight, though. Agreed. They reached the ruins of the old celestial settlement just before dawn. The place was exactly as Vonda's visions had shown: burned buildings, crumbling foundations, and at the center, a massive crater where the main house had once stood. 23 years of weather had softened the destruction, but Sherry could still feel the echoes of violence, of terror, of lives cut short by fire and blade. Her family had died here. Her parents, her siblings, if she'd had any, everyone she should have known and loved. Anger, cold and fierce, settled in her chest. There. Nate pointed to the crater's center. Do you see it? Sherry looked and felt her breath catch. The barrier between their world and the void was visible here. A translucent membrane shot through with cracks. And surrounding it, arranged in a ritual circle, stood 13 figures in dark robes. Vonda at their head, her hands raised, shadow magic pouring from her fingers into the barrier's weakest point. They've already started, one of the commanders said grimly. Then we end it. Adrian shifted back to human form, his warriors following suit. Strike Team Alpha, circle left. Beta, circle right. When I give the signal, we attack simultaneously. Celestials. We go straight for Vonda, Sherry finished. Break her concentration, stop the ritual, and try not to die, Nate added. The goddess might not resurrect us a second time, Adrian pulled Sherry close, kissing her hard. "Come back to me. Always." They moved into position silently. 50 warriors surrounding the ritual site. Vonda and her allies were so focused on their dark magic that they didn't notice until it was too late. "Now," Adrian roared. The attack began. And in the center of the ruins where her family had died, Sherry prepared to face the woman who'd tried to destroy everything she loved. Chapter 9. The Final Battle. Chaos erupted in the crater. Adrian's warriors hit the ritual circle from 3 sides simultaneously, crashing into Vonda's robed allies with the force of an avalanche. Wolves snarled and clashed, celestial light met shadow magic, and the very air seemed to tear as 2 opposing forces collided. But Vonda didn't stop chanting. She stood at the center of the circle with her hands pressed against the barrier, shadow magic pouring from her into the cracks. The membrane was bulging, stretching, beginning to tear. On the other side, Sherry could see movement shadow beasts gathering, waiting for the moment when they could pour through. "We have to break her concentration." Nate shifted to his celestial wolf form, his silver-white fur blazing. "Sherry, can you?" "I'm on it." Sherry let her own transformation take her, felt her blessed wolf surge forth larger and more powerful than ever before. The goddess's blessing made her radiant, made her a weapon of pure divine light. She and Nate charged together, celestial power blazing. 2 of Vonda's allies broke away from the fighting to intercept them. Rogues twisted by dark magic, their wolves corrupted into something monstrous. They were fast, vicious, and absolutely fearless. Nate took the one on the left, his celestial fangs tearing into shadow-corrupted flesh. Sherry dodged right, avoiding a strike that would have torn her throat out, and countered with a blast of divine light that sent her opponent flying. But there were more. 4 more robed figures converged on them, and Sherry realized with sickening clarity that Vonda had planned for this, had known the Celestials would come for her, and positioned her strongest allies to keep them occupied. "Adrian," Sherry sent through the mate bond. "We can't get through. There are too many. Hold on." His alpha power surged, and suddenly the tide of battle shifted. Adrian tore through Vonda's forces like a force of nature, his massive alpha wolf scattering enemies with each strike. Behind him, Katina fought with surprising ferocity, her sleek wolf form darting in and out of combat with practiced efficiency. They carved a path toward Vonda, but it wasn't fast enough. The barrier tore, not completely, just a small rip, maybe 3 feet across. But it was enough. A shadow beast's limb pushed through, then another, its form materializing in their world with a sound like reality screaming. "No!" Nate's celestial power flared, and he broke away from his opponent to blast the emerging beast with divine light. The creature shrieked and recoiled, but the damage was done. The barrier had been breached, and with each second that passed, the tear grew wider. Vonda laughed, her voice echoing across the ruins. "Too late, celestial wolf. The barrier is falling. My God's will." She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes going wide. Sherry followed her gaze and felt her heart stop. The tear in the barrier was growing, yes. But not in the way Vonda had intended. Instead of simply opening a passage for shadow beasts, the entire membrane was destabilizing. Cracks spider-webbed across its surface, racing outward in every direction. This wasn't a controlled breach, this was total collapse. "What did you do?" Nate's mental voice was horrified. "Vonda, what did you do?" For the first time, Vonda looked uncertain. Afraid. It wasn't supposed to. The ritual was supposed to create a stable portal. Not. "You've destroyed the entire barrier," Sherry said, and even through her wolf form, her voice carried across the battlefield. The fighting stopped as wolves on both sides realized what was happening. The barrier, which had protected their world from the void for thousands of years, was disintegrating before their eyes. And beyond it, Sherry could see them. Not just a handful of shadow beasts, hundreds, thousands, an entire army of void creatures waiting to pour through. "We have to close it," Nate said urgently. "Sherry, the celestial heart, if we combine our power through the crystal, we might be able to repair." "There's no time," Vonda interrupted. She'd abandoned her ritual stance, was backing away from the barrier with genuine terror on her face. "The collapse is accelerating. In 5 minutes, maybe less, the entire barrier will be gone. And when that happens, everyone dies, Adrian finished grimly. He'd shifted back to human form, blood dripping from wounds on his chest and arms. Around him, his warriors regrouped, but Sherry could see the defeat in their eyes. You couldn't fight an army of shadow beasts. You couldn't survive the void itself pouring into your world. This was the end. Unless… Sherry shifted back to human form, her mind racing. The third trial had taught her something about sacrifice, about choosing the greater good over personal desire, about being willing to give everything, and she just realized what the prophecy had truly demanded all along. Nate, she said quietly. The barrier. Why was it created in the first place? The first celestial wolves made it, he answered, clearly not understanding where she was going. They used their life force to seal the void away, to create a permanent barrier that would protect, quote. He stopped, understanding dawning in his luminous eyes. No. Sherry. No. Life force, Sherry repeated. They gave their lives to create the barrier. Which means repairing it requires the same sacrifice, Nate finished, his voice hollow. A celestial wolf's life force, freely given, could seal the barrier again, but it would kill you. Your consciousness would be bound into the barrier itself, sustaining it for eternity. Or until the next time someone tries to tear it down, Sherry said. She looked at Adrian, saw the horror dawning on his face. But it would buy time. Centuries, maybe millennia. Long enough for our children's children to find another solution. No. Adrian crossed to her in 3 strides, gripping her shoulders. No. We just got you back. I just got you back. You're not doing this. Adrian. I said no. His power flared, desperate and commanding. There has to be another way. We'll evacuate the kingdom. We'll fight the shadow beasts. We'll lose, Sherry said gently. You know we will. There are too many. And even if we somehow survived, what kind of life would it be? Constantly fighting, always afraid, watching our people die one by one? She cupped his face in her hands. You said some things are worth dying for. This is one of them. But I'll lose you. His voice cracked. The mate bond. We'll survive. She pressed her forehead to his. I won't be dead, not really, just changed. My consciousness will be part of the barrier, part of the protection keeping our world safe. You'll still be able to feel me, still be able to sense my presence. Tears spilled down her cheeks. And when you finally die of old age, when your time comes, I'll be waiting. I'll guide you to whatever comes next. That could be centuries from now. I know. Sherry pulled back to look at him properly. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But you know this is the only way. Adrian's face crumpled. He pulled her against his chest, his arms crushing tight, and Sherry felt wetness drip into her hair as he cried. Behind them, the barrier continued to collapse. The tear was now 10 feet across, and shadow beasts were beginning to push through in earnest. Nate was holding them back with celestial fire, but he couldn't maintain it forever. How do we do this? Adrian asked finally, his voice rough. What does she need? Nate's expression was devastated. The celestial heart, as a focus. Her life force, channeled into the barrier's foundation. And he hesitated, the willing participation of her mate. The bond between you can amplify the sacrifice. Make it powerful enough to not just repair the barrier but strengthen it beyond what it was before. Meaning he has to help me die, Sherry said softly. Meaning I have to kill you, Adrian corrected, his voice hollow. The ritual requires your mate to be the one who releases your life force. I have to, he couldn't finish. Sherry took his hand, pressed it over her heart. Then we do it together. Like everything else. Together. I hate this, Adrian whispered. I hate the goddess for demanding this. I hate the prophecy. I know. Sherry kissed him, tasting salt and grief and love so fierce it hurt. But our people need us. And we don't get to choose our destiny. We only get to choose how we face it. She turned to Nate. What do I need to do? 5 minutes later, Sherry stood at the barrier's weakest point with the celestial heart pressed between her hands. Around her, Adrian's warriors had formed a protective circle, holding back shadow beasts and Vonda's remaining allies while the ritual was prepared. Vonda herself had fled, disappearing into the ruins the moment she realized her plan had failed catastrophically. Sherry hoped she choked on her cowardice. Wherever she was hiding, Nate stood behind her, his hands on her shoulders, channeling celestial power to help stabilize the working, and Adrian knelt before her, his right hand resting over her heart, his face carved from stone. "When I release the power," Sherry told him quietly, "you'll feel the mate bond trying to follow me into death. You have to resist. You have to stay alive, keep leading our people. I don't know if I can." "You can. You're the strongest person I know." She smiled through her tears. "Besides, I need you to do something for me. Anything. Find the wild wolves, the ones who raised me. Tell them what happened. Tell them I loved them, that I never forgot them." Her voice cracked. "And maybe bring them into the kingdom. Give them protected territory. They saved me once. The least we can do is save them in return. I promise." Adrian's hand trembled against her chest. "I swear to you, I'll take care of them. Then I'm ready." She closed her eyes and reached deep into her celestial power. The goddess had blessed her, had given her everything the first celestial wolves once wielded. Now she would use that gift the way it was meant to be used, to protect, to sacrifice, to save. Her life force began to flow into the celestial heart. The crystal blazed white-hot, almost too bright to look at, and through the mate bond she felt Adrian's hand begin to glow where it touched her. This was it. The moment that would define everything. "I love you," she whispered. "In this life, and every life after. I love you," Adrian choked out. "My brave, impossible mate." He released his alpha power into her, and the combination of celestial light and alpha strength created something new. Something that had never existed before, a fusion of bloodlines, a merging of forces that should have been incompatible. Sherry's life force poured into the barrier. She felt her body beginning to fade, felt her consciousness expanding outward, becoming part of the membrane between worlds. It didn't hurt. It felt like coming home, like being held by something vast and ancient and infinitely loving. The barrier repaired itself in seconds. The tears sealed, the cracks mended, and the entire membrane blazed with silver-white light. Shadow beasts shrieked as they were forced back through, back into the void where they belonged. The barrier wasn't just restored, it was stronger than before, reinforced by Sherry's sacrifice and Adrian's love. "Thank you," the moon goddess's voice whispered through Sherry's fading consciousness. "Thank you, brave little wolf. You have saved them all." Sherry felt herself slipping away, felt her human form dissolving. In seconds, she would be gone, just a consciousness woven into the barrier, watching over the world she'd saved but never able to touch it again. Then something impossible happened. The barrier pulsed, and the goddess's presence surged through it like lightning. "You passed every trial," the goddess said, her voice echoing through reality itself. "You sacrificed everything, multiple times, always choosing others over yourself. You earned this." Light exploded around Sherry. Her consciousness snapped back into her body with jarring force, and suddenly she was solid again, real again, alive. She gasped and fell forward into Adrian's arms. "What?" Nate's voice was shocked. "That's not possible. The barrier should have." She earned her life back. The goddess's voice rang out, audible to everyone present. "And I have decided to grant mercy. The barrier is restored, powered not by Sherry's death but by the love between her and her mate. As long as their bond endures, as long as Alpha and Celestial remain united, the barrier will hold." Sherry looked up at Adrian through tears, saw the same shocked hope on his face. "You're alive," he breathed. "You're really, I'm alive." She laughed, the sound breaking into a sob. "We're both alive." He kissed her then, desperate and grateful and absolutely shameless about claiming his mate in front of everyone. The mate bond blazed between them, stronger than ever, and Sherry felt the barrier pulse in response. They were bound to it now. Bound to each other. And as long as they stood together, the kingdom would be safe. Around them, Adrian's warriors erupted into cheers. Even Katina was smiling, though she turned away quickly as if embarrassed to show emotion. And Nate knelt in the grass, his head bowed, his shoulders shaking. Sherry pulled away from Adrian and moved to him, kneeling beside her celestial brother. "Nate? I thought I'd lost you both," he said roughly. "Thought I'd be alone again. The last celestial, with no family, no one who understood. You're not alone." Sherry pulled him into a fierce embrace. "You're my brother. My family. And you always will be." He held her tight, and Sherry felt their celestial powers harmonize, not romantic, not the mate bond, but something equally profound. The connection between two survivors who'd found each other against impossible odds. When they finally pulled apart, the sun was rising over the ruins. The barrier shimmered in the morning light, whole and strong and absolutely impenetrable. They'd done it. They'd fulfilled the prophecy, passed every trial, saved the kingdom. And somehow, impossibly, they'd all survived. "Come on," Adrian said, helping them both to their feet. "Let's go home." Chapter 10. The Celestial Queen. 3 months later, Sherry stood on the balcony of the royal chambers and watched the sun set over a kingdom finally at peace. The repairs to the eastern border were nearly complete. Villages destroyed by rogues had been rebuilt, stronger than before. The families who'd lost loved ones in Vonda's attack had been compensated, honored, their grief acknowledged by a king who understood the cost of sacrifice. And Vonda herself, she'd been found 2 weeks after the battle, hiding in a smuggler's den on the southern coast. Adrian had given Sherry the choice of what to do with her. Execution would have been justified, expected even. But Sherry had chosen something else. Strip her of her magic, she'd told the High Priestess. Bind her so she can never touch shadow power again. Then exile her to the farthest reaches of the kingdom, where she can spend the rest of her life remembering what she lost by serving false gods. It was a mercy Vonda didn't deserve. But Sherry had learned that mercy, even for enemies, was part of what made a true leader, part of what the goddess had been teaching her all along. Lost in thought? Adrian's arms wrapped around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "Just thinking about how different everything is now." Sherry leaned back against him, feeling the mate bond hum with contentment. 3 months ago, I was sleeping in barns. Now I'm about to be crowned Luna Queen in front of the entire kingdom," Adrian finished. He turned her in his arms, his golden eyes warm. "Having second thoughts, terrified thoughts," Sherry admitted. "I can barely read. I don't know the first thing about politics or diplomacy or, you know, how to sacrifice for others, how to make impossible choices, how to stand up for what's right even when it costs everything." He kissed her forehead. "That's more important than any amount of political training. The rest, we'll teach you." "We?" "Nate's been appointed as your official advisor. He knows more about celestial history and magic than anyone alive." And surprisingly, Adrian's smile turned wry. "Katina volunteered to help train you in court protocols." Sherry blinked. "Katina? The woman who hates me?" "The woman who respects you," Adrian corrected. "What you did at the ruins, choosing to die for the kingdom, it changed how she sees you. Changed how a lot of wolves see you." His expression turned serious. "You're not just my mate anymore, Sherry. You're a symbol. The celestial wolf who rose from nothing, who passed every trial, who saved us all. People love you." "That's terrifying." "I know." He pulled her closer. "But you're not facing it alone. Never alone." A knock sounded at the door. Nate entered without waiting for permission, carrying a bundle of white fabric. "The coronation gown is ready," he announced. "Though the seamstress wants me to tell you she's never worked with material that glows before, and if you could please try not to flare your celestial power while wearing it, she'd appreciate." "It glows?" Sherry interrupted. "You're a celestial wolf blessed directly by the goddess," Nate said dryly. "Of course it glows. We had to commission special fabric woven with silver thread that could channel celestial light without burning." He laid the gown across a chair, and even folded. It was breathtaking. Pure white silk with silver embroidery that formed patterns of moons and stars and wolves running through forests. "It's beautiful," Sherry whispered. "It's appropriate," Nate corrected. "You're not just becoming Luna Queen. You're being formally recognized as the last of the celestial bloodline, keeper of the barrier, guardian of the realm." His celestial eyes softened. "Our ancestors would be proud of you, sister." The word still made Sherry's chest tighten with emotion. "Family." She had family now. Not just Adrian, not just the mate bond, but Nate, her brother by blood and circumstance, the only other wolf who truly understood what it meant to be celestial. "Have you given any more thought to my proposal?" Nate asked Adrian. "About establishing a celestial council." "Yes. And I think it's a good idea." Adrian moved to the table where maps and documents were spread out. "We'll allocate territory here, in the northern mountains, close enough to the capital for coordination but isolated enough that Celestials can train without interference." "Train?" Sherry looked between them. "Train who?" "We're the only two Celestials left. For now," Nate said carefully. "But the goddess spoke to me last week. Showed me a vision. Wolves with dormant celestial bloodlines who don't know what they are. Descendants of Celestials who escaped the massacre by hiding their nature, breeding into normal packs." His expression turned hopeful. "With the barrier restored, with you and Adrian proving that celestial power can coexist with alpha strength, they might finally feel safe enough to reveal themselves." "We could rebuild," Sherry breathed. "Not just the bloodline, but everything our ancestors were meant to be," Nate finished. "Guardians. Protectors. The goddess's hands in the mortal world." He smiled. "It won't happen overnight. But we have time now. Centuries, if the goddess is kind." Another knock at the door. This time, Katina entered, dressed in formal court attire. She'd changed since the battle, still proud, still beautiful, but something in her eyes had softened. "The guests are arriving," she announced. "Nobles from every territory, alphas from allied packs, even delegations from the western kingdoms. Everyone wants to witness the coronation of the celestial wolf." She paused, then added grudgingly, "You should prepare yourself. The crowd will be enormous." "Thank you, Katina," Sherry said sincerely. The other woman nodded stiffly. "I've also taken the liberty of preparing note cards for your coronation speech. Simple phrases, large letters so you can read them easily. Don't thank me," she added quickly when Sherry opened her mouth. "I'm doing this for the kingdom, not for you." But her eyes told a different story. And when she left, Sherry saw the ghost of a smile on her lips. "She's warming up to you," Adrian observed. "She's learning to live with me," Sherry corrected. "That's good enough." The coronation took place at sunset, in the same grand temple where Sherry had nearly died under the blood moon. But where that night had been filled with fear and contempt, tonight was filled with celebration. Thousands of wolves packed the temple and spilled out into the courtyards beyond. Nobles and commoners, warriors and farmers, families who'd traveled for days just to witness this moment. The air hummed with excitement and hope. Sherry stood in the preparation chamber, wearing the glowing gown, her silver-white hair, which had turned permanently luminous after the goddess's final blessing cascading down her back. She barely recognized herself in the mirror. "You look like a goddess," Adrian said from the doorway. He wore formal alpha regalia, black and gold, commanding and fierce. But his eyes were soft when they landed on her. "I look terrified," Sherry corrected. "That too." He crossed to her, taking her hands. "Remember, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you. That's what they love. That's what I love." The mate bond pulsed with reassurance, with strength, with the absolute certainty of his faith in her. "Together," Sherry said softly. "Together," Adrian agreed. They walked into the temple hand in hand. The crowd erupted into cheers the moment they appeared. Sherry felt thousands of eyes on her, felt the weight of their hopes and expectations. But Adrian's hand in hers kept her grounded, kept her moving forward. At the center of the temple, the moon goddess's statue stood where it had always been, but now it was facing forward, arms outstretched in permanent blessing toward whoever approached. The high priestess stood beside it, ancient and serene. "Kneel," she commanded gently. Sherry and Adrian knelt together before the statue, before the goddess, before their people. "Adrian Robertson, Alpha King of the Southern Territories, you have chosen your mate. Do you swear to honor her, protect her, and stand beside her as equal partner in all things?" "I swear it," Adrian said, his voice ringing clear. "On my life, on my pack, on the goddess herself." "Sherry Bolton, last of the celestial bloodline, keeper of the barrier, you have been chosen. Do you swear to serve this kingdom, protect its people, And use your blessed power for the good of all? Sherry's voice was steady when she answered. I swear it. On my life, on my bloodline, on the goddess who saved me. The high priestess lifted the Luna crown, delicate silver shaped like moonbeams, embedded with the same glowing crystals as Sherry's coronation gown. She placed it on Sherry's head, and the moment the metal touched her hair, celestial light blazed outward. The entire temple illuminated, silver-white radiance filling every corner, washing over the assembled wolves like a benediction. Some gasped. Others wept. A few fell to their knees in reverence. And the moon goddess's statue, it moved. Not dramatically, not like during the blood moon trial. Just a subtle shift, the carved face turning slightly toward Sherry, stone eyes seeming to glow with inner light. A final acknowledgement. A final blessing. Rise, the high priestess commanded. Rise, Alpha King Adrian and Luna Queen Sherry. Rise and claim your kingdom. They stood together, hand in hand, and the temple erupted into deafening cheers. Speech, someone shouted from the crowd. Others took up the cry. Speech, speech. Sherry looked at Adrian, panic flickering across her face. He squeezed her hand and stepped forward. My people, he began, his alpha voice carrying to every corner of the temple. Tonight, we celebrate not just a coronation but a new beginning. For too long, this kingdom was built on secrets and lies, on genocide disguised as justice, on fear of those who were different. His expression hardened. My father murdered the celestial bloodline because he feared their power. He destroyed families, orphaned children, and convinced you all it was necessary. Uncomfortable murmurs rippled through the crowd. But tonight, Adrian continued, we acknowledge the truth. We honor those who died, and we welcome back the bloodline that should never have been lost. He turned to Sherry, pulling her forward. My mate, your queen, is the last survivor of that massacre. She spent 23 years sleeping in barns, eating scraps, believing she was worthless. She endured trials that would have broken anyone else. And when the prophecy demanded she sacrifice everything, her mate, her life, her very existence, she did it without hesitation. Sherry felt tears prick her eyes as he spoke. The goddess saw her sacrifice and granted mercy, restored not just her life but the barrier that protects us all. And she did this through love, through the bond between Alpha and Celestial, through the union of forces that should have been impossible. Adrian's voice rose. That is your queen. That is the wolf who will stand beside me, who will help me lead this kingdom into a better future. A future where all bloodlines are valued, where sacrifice is honored, where love is stronger than fear. The crowd erupted into cheers so loud Sherry's ears rang. Adrian stepped back, letting her take the center. Sherry pulled out Katina's note cards with shaking hands and began to read. I don't have fancy words, she said, her voice quieter than Adrian's but no less sincere. I wasn't raised in palaces or taught court manners. Everything I know about survival, I learned from wild wolves, who showed me more kindness than most shifters ever did. She lowered the cards, speaking from her heart instead. But I know what it means to be forgotten, to be invisible, to be told you're worthless. The temple had gone silent, everyone listening intently. And I swear to you, as long as I'm your queen, no wolf in this kingdom will feel that way again. No child will go hungry. No family will be cast aside because they're different or weak or don't fit into neat categories. Her celestial power flared, making her glow brighter. The goddess chose me not because I'm special, but because I understand what it means to suffer, to fight for every scrap of dignity, to survive when the world says you shouldn't. She looked out at the crowd, meeting eyes, making connections. So I ask you, help me. Help me build a kingdom where everyone belongs. Where Celestial and Alpha, Beta and Omega, everyone has value. Where we protect each other instead of preying on the weak. Her voice strengthened. That's the future I want. That's the future I'll fight for. And if you'll stand with me, if you'll trust me even though I'm still learning, I promise I will never stop fighting for you. The silence lasted for 3 heartbeats. Then the temple exploded with sound, cheering, howling, wolves shifting in celebration. The noise was deafening, overwhelming, and absolutely genuine. Sherry felt Adrian's arm wrap around her waist, felt him pull her close. That was perfect, he murmured against her ear. I forgot half of Katina's cards. You spoke from your heart. That's better than any prepared speech. He kissed her temple. My brilliant, impossible queen. The celebration lasted until dawn. There was feasting in the palace courtyards, dancing in the streets, wolves from every territory mingling and celebrating together. Sherry moved through the crowds with Adrian at her side, accepting congratulations, listening to stories, trying to remember names and faces. Nate found them near midnight, slightly drunk and grinning. The Western delegation wants to establish a formal alliance. The Northern packs are asking if you'll visit their territories. And at least 6 families have approached me, claiming they have dormant celestial bloodlines. He laughed. You've started a revolution, sister. I just gave a speech, Sherry protested. You gave hope. Nate corrected. That's more powerful than any weapon. Near the palace steps, Sherry spotted a group of wild wolves, the same pack that had raised her. Adrian had kept his promise, bringing them into the kingdom, giving them protected territory and honor as Sherry's adopted family. She excused herself and went to them, kneeling in the grass to press her forehead against the alpha females. The she-wolf huffed softly, a sound of approval and love, and for a moment, Sherry was just a cub again, safe in the forest with wolves who'd chosen to save her. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. The wild wolves surrounded her in a protective circle, their acceptance absolute and unconditional. When she returned to Adrian, he was watching her with an expression of such love it made her breath catch. What? She asked, just remembering the scared Omega who was dragged into the temple in chains. He said softly, and marveling at the queen standing in front of me now. Same person, Sherry pointed out. No. He pulled her close, the mate bond singing between them. Better, stronger, everything you were meant to be. They stood together as the sun rose over their kingdom, bathing everything in golden light. The barrier shimmered in the distance, holding strong, powered by their bond and blessed by the goddess. What happens now? Sherry asked. Now? Adrian smiled. Now we live, we lead, we build the future we fought for. He paused, his expression turning mischievous. And eventually, when you're ready, we start working on heirs to continue the celestial bloodline. Sherry blushed, shoving him playfully. One thing at a time. Alpha King. Fair enough. He kissed her, gentle and claiming and absolutely shameless. But know that I'm looking forward to every moment of it. Every challenge, every triumph, every day spent at your side. Together, Sherry said softly. Together. Adrian agreed. Always. Epilogue. 5 years later, Sherry stood in the same temple where she'd been crowned, watching the sunrise paint the goddess's statue in shades of gold and pink. In her arms, a baby boy slept peacefully, her son, born 3 months ago with silver-white hair and eyes that glowed golden when he opened them. The first child born of both celestial and alpha bloodlines in recorded history. Behind her, she heard Adrian approaching, their daughter toddling beside him. At 2 years old, little Erin already showed signs of inheriting both her parents' gifts, celestial light that blazed when she was happy, alpha dominance that made even grown wolves submit when she threw tantrums. There you are, Adrian said softly, scooping up Erin before she could trip over her own feet. I woke up and you were gone. Couldn't sleep. Wanted to watch the sunrise. Sherry shifted the baby to one arm and leaned against her mate. I was thinking about everything that's changed. The Celestial Council is thriving. Nate found 16 wolves with dormant bloodlines. The Western Alliance is holding strong. The villages on the border are finally safe. You sound surprised, Adrian observed. I am. 5 years ago, I was sleeping in barns. Now I'm a queen with 2 children and a kingdom that's actually thriving. She looked up at him. Sometimes I still can't believe it's real. Believe it. He kissed her forehead. The baby stirred, making a small sound. His eyes opened bright gold, just like his father's. But when he looked at the goddess's statue, his gaze began to glow with celestial light. He's going to be powerful, Sherry whispered. They both are. Adrian watched Erin reach for the statue with chubby hands, watched faint light spark at her fingertips. The first generation of wolves who carry both bloodlines, who prove that Alpha and Celestial don't have to be enemies, that different kinds of power can coexist. That love is stronger than prophecy, Sherry added softly. always. Adrian pulled them all closer, his mate, his daughter, his son, his family. And whatever challenges come next, whatever trials the goddess decides to throw at us, we'll face them together. Sherry looked at the statue of the moon goddess, at the serene stone face that had witnessed her transformation from barn rat to queen. And she could have sworn the statue smiled. "You did well, little wolf," the goddess's voice whispered through her mind. "You took an impossible situation and turned it into something beautiful. You proved that sacrifice isn't about death, it's about choosing what matters most. And you've created a legacy that will endure for generations. Thank you," Sherry sent back. "For the trials, for the blessings, for showing me that I was never worthless, even when the world said I was. You were always precious, child. Always exactly what I needed you to be." The presence faded, leaving only warmth and love and the absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. "Come on," Adrian said gently. "Let's go home. Nate's bringing the council members for breakfast, and Katina threatened to resign if I let the children disrupt another formal meeting." Sherry laughed. "She loves them, and you know it." "She loves you," Adrian corrected. "The children are just an excuse to visit." They walked back toward the palace together, the Alpha King and the Celestial Queen, their children held safe between them. Behind them, the sun rose over a kingdom finally at peace. And in the forest beyond the city walls, wild wolves howled their approval, celebrating the cub they'd saved so long ago who'd grown into a queen worth following. The prophecy was fulfilled. The trials were complete. The barrier held strong. And Sherry Bolton, who'd once been nothing, had become everything. And so, dear viewers, Sherry's journey from Forgotten Omega to Celestial Queen comes to an end. But before you go, I want to ask you something. If you were in Sherry's position, forced to choose between saving your soulmate or saving thousands of innocent lives, which would you choose? And more importantly, could you live with that choice? Drop your answer in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'm genuinely curious what you'd do. And if this story moved you, inspired you, or kept you hooked, please show some love with a like. It helps more people discover stories like this. Until next time, may the moon goddess guide your path.